Chapter 476. The light faded away. What remained in the sky above the moon base was the shattered wreckage that had lost its original form. It floated quietly in the sky. Among them, there was also an incomparably tenacious cavalry that was already at the end of its life. Dioscuri, relying on the strong defense of the dimensional wall, which was superior to many orbital knights, it was able to withstand the attack of the raging flame demon sword, but it had reached its limit. Dioscuri of Zasbrum. Fermion, who was stunned by the shocking effect of the fiery magic sword, finally came back to his senses when he noticed Dioscuri's broken body that had lost all his senses. Without thinking, Fermion's Horus quickly moved to Dioscuri's side and raised his hand to press on Dioscuri's shoulder, seemingly trying to communicate through contact. Seeing this, Mecha did not care about Fermion's actions. Al. Report status. Raging Flame Demon Sword. No abnormalities in the system. Knight Captain, this is a beautiful attack. The enemy is silent. While listing various data on the screen, Al also said some rare words of flattery. This rare action also made the white cat State Zero, who was lying next to him, raise its small head in surprise and exclaim, "Blockhead, are you enlightened? State Zero, get ready. You'll be on the field later." Mecha did not care about the white cat State Zero's action of making fun of Al. Instead, he spoke of the next step. Understood. With one attack, the road to the moon base was unimpeded. The only thing left was to attack the moon base and face the hidden princess Remurina, who was pretending to be Islam. Fianna, who stayed by her side, might have reached the best time to make a move. But Fermion suddenly sent out a signal. Dioscuri's pilot was still alive. "Yo, are you the owner of that battleship?" Through Horus, a weak male voice was transmitted to the raging flame demon sword. "Count Zasbrum?" As soon as he heard this voice, Mecha said a name. "Ha, yes, it's me, Zasbrum. You are very strong." But now, the Weiss Empire was under the control of others. Weiss royal family, haha, it's just a joke, haha. Zasbrum's hoarse laughter rang out, but it was followed by a miserable howl of pain. Was it because of the wound? That mysterious singing voice. Mecha's words stunned Zasbrum for a moment before he laughed even louder. "Count Zasbrum, you already knew about it?" Fermion was surprised. She didn't expect Zasbrum to say something like that. "Count Fermion, the Weiss royal family and the orbital knight were just a joke. Haha, what inferior race." Everything was a lie made up by the Weiss royal family to satisfy their own ambitions. As a result, the laughable ambition of snatching back the fertile land from the hands of the inferior races was controlled by a hand behind the scenes. Ha 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 ha! Amidst the hoarse laughter, Zasbrum was greeted with a questioning voice. "Count Zasbrum, why did you plan and start this war? Weiss didn't need this war at all." After the raging flame demon sword annihilated many of the orbital knights, the battle on the battlefield also moved towards a peaceful situation. Under the escort of the Lionheart Knight squad, Avalon finally arrived at the sky above the moon base. At the same time, Ethelum's voice also intervened in the communication with Dioscuri. "Hey, Princess Ethelum, I have to say, you are really lucky. You were able to survive that assassination." "That's right. I was the one who planned everything. In order to liberate the people of Weiss from the oppression of the Weiss royal family, so that the people of Weiss would no longer be bound by those ridiculous bloodlines and arguments of inferior races, so that the people of Weiss could have a brand new world." Zasbrum's hands covered the bandages that had turned red, and his face gradually turned pale, but his voice was still firm. But now it's all over. But the result is not bad. Etheram Visser Etherosia. I will wait in hell for the destruction of the Weiss royal family, together with my fiancé, Viscount Volane. Click. There was the sound of a safety lock being unlocked in Dioscuri's cockpit. When an inexplicable pressure appeared, Zasbrum was sucked into space. Horus, who was closest to Dioscuri, just happened to catch the scene when Dioscuri opened the cockpit and Zasbrum committed suicide. The red-clothed count tumbled madly under the force of the airflow. The bandages were dyed dark red, and the mixture of red and white was particularly eye-catching. Through Horace's electronic eyes, Fermion could clearly see Zasbarum's sharp gaze and calm expression in the face of death before he was sucked into space. Subconsciously, Fermion controlled Horace to reach out his right hand and catch Zasbarum, who was completely frozen in time just now. Looking at the calm expression on Zasbarum's face, an indescribable feeling slowly rose from the bottom of his heart. "Count Fermion, what happened to Count Zasbarum?" Ethelum's voice sounded again, but this time it was the news of Zasbarum's death. How decisive! Ray Minkai did not expect Zasbarum to choose to commit suicide after a disagreement. Moreover, in the conversation just now, Zasbarum had obviously discovered the mastermind behind the Weiss Empire. Other than that, Zasbarum did not say any useful information at all. Even if he dies, he still wants to take the secret to hell. Lei Minkai glanced at Zasbarum, who was lying in Horace's hand, and sighed softly. "Avalon, begin the assault on the moon base now. Please send out a special team." Inside the moon base, Fianna pushed Remurina along the passage all the way to the deepest part of the moon base. In addition to the two of them, there were only Serene and two soldiers beside him. "Fianna, do you know that this base once had a mysterious device called the hyperspace gate?" Remurina, who was sitting in a wheelchair, asked this question in a calm voice. If it weren't for the fact that they were in a state of war, people might think that this was just a small interlude in a garden party. Hyperspace gate. I heard that 15 years ago, there was a super disaster caused by the hyperspace gate going berserk. At the same time, it was also the accident that caused the death of our Count Valia. Fianna recalled the knowledge that Ray Minkai taught her in her mind and answered Remurina's question softly. "Yes, the hyperspace gate that caused the explosion 15 years ago did indeed destroy the hyperspace gate. However, this is just a facade. In fact, in the depths of the hyperspace gate, there's a gate that no one other than the Weiss royal family knows about." After Remurina raised her hand and pointed to the road ahead, she continued. "When humans discovered the existence of the hyperspace door and used it to go to the ancient ruins of Mars, Veligalia Labas, the first emperor of Veligalia, who had not yet obtained the activation factor of Yeldinoh, discovered a clue during a study. And this clue was answered after she obtained the activation factor. The journey was not too far. It was just that they had to pass through multiple security gates on the way. Only people with the activation factor could activate the gate. Under the leadership of Remurina, the princess with the activation factor, everyone quickly came to the deepest part of the moon base, the unknown secret place. This is the secret that the Weiss royal family, no, it should be said that the first Weiss emperor, Regalia Weiss Labas, has been hiding from the world. As the wheelchair was pushed into the extremely deep underground space by Fianna, Remurina raised her hand and pointed to the door in the center of the underground space. A door that was 5 meters wide and about 3 meters high. This is the predecessor of the hyperspace gate. It is an experimental door made by the ancient lost civilization of Mars. Experimental door? Is it the precursor to the development of the hyperspace gate? Yes. Fianna's words made Remurina nod. This is the underground space protected by the system created by the ancient lost civilization. Except for the bloodline with the activation factor, no one else can enter. Fianna, you're the first outsider to enter here other than me. In fact, there was one thing that Remurina did not say. During the years when she was taken in by Zasbarum, she accidentally discovered the existence of this door while wandering around the moon base out of boredom. However, Remurina didn't tell Zasbarum about the existence of the door immediately. Instead, she chose to keep it a secret until now, and only then did she reveal it to the public. "Your Royal Highness, are we going to return to Weiss through this door now?" Fianna's gaze lingered on the door. "Yes." Remurina nodded, then raised her hand and pressed the wheelchair handle, letting the control program drive the wheelchair to a small table with a spherical device next to it. Then, she placed her right hand on the spherical device and slowly close her eyes. In the name of the one who has inherited Vice bloodline, Noah, awaken, as Eldnoh, who had been sleeping for a long time, woke up. A voice suddenly sounded in the sky above this underground space. "I am Ethelem Visser Elysia," she cried. "Soldiers of Weiss, stop fighting. This kind of war had never been allowed to happen. This war was meaningless. I command you now, in the name of Ethelem Visser Eliasia, stop all attacks. This war must stop immediately." "Ah, AI say." Before Remulina could react, Serene, who had been silent all this time, suddenly clutched his head and screamed in pain. "No, AI say. This is Princess AI say's voice. No." The inexplicable pain made Serene unable to stand still, and his body kept shaking. Instead, it made the two soldiers beside him panic, not knowing what to do. Serene, who staggered a few steps, raised his head with difficulty and looked at Remulina, who had placed her hand on the spherical device, as if he wanted to confirm with his own eyes that the Princess Ethelem in his eyes was really by his side. However, in his blurred and sometimes clear vision, the Princess Ethelem in front of Serene's eyes kept switching back and forth between the figure Serene was familiar with and an unfamiliar woman with purple hair wearing a dress. That familiar, unfamiliar, and completely opposite feeling made Serene's brain, which was already in severe pain, fall into endless torture. "No, AI, Princess, Your Highness." Fortunately, Fianna's eyes were sharp and her hands were fast. She quickly stepped forward and raised her hand to chop Serene. Under this blow, Serene, who was clutching his head and screaming in pain, fainted. "Take him. Let's go." Fianna ordered the two soldiers without any explanation, and quickly walked behind Remulina and reached out to hold the wheelchair handle. "Excuse me, Your Highness. Now we must return to Weiser immediately. I'm afraid this base has already fallen." Fianna's expression made Remulina a little surprised, but more than that, she was relieved. Sure enough, there was still a knight by her side that she could trust. The light of Eldnoh gradually flowed. Remulina and Fianna were in front, and the two soldiers carrying the unconscious Serene were behind them. They all disappeared into the light of the small hyperspace portal that had been asleep for a long time and had once again awakened. Under the powerful attack of Avalon, this moon base that had been hanging over the head of the Earth Alliance army for a long time fell. Of course, the one who made this battle end in the shortest time was still Ethelem. Under the escort of White Cat Zero's wild lion form, Ethelem was smoothly sent to the audience hall on the moon base and delivered the ceasefire speech. In the end, it was a relief for everyone. It seemed that only the orbital knight and the others were manipulated by the mysterious song. The wiser soldiers in the middle and lower levels were not affected by the mysterious song. Therefore, under Ethelem's appeal, the battle quickly ended. However, there was still a big problem in front of Mecha, Euphemia, and Ethelem. The passage that Remulina, Fianna, and the others escaped through was quickly discovered by White Cat Zero. Standing in front of the strange, yet familiar door, the three of them looked at each other in confusion. Is this the hidden hyperspace door? Mecha searched his memory several times, but still could not find the corresponding answer. Maybe. Ethelem was also confused. As the first princess of the wiser royal family, Ethelem did not know the existence of this hidden hyperspace door. Whether you know or not, now the people we are looking for have escaped through this door. What should we do? Euphemia, on the other hand, was rather open-minded. She directly changed the topic to the pursuit. Let's use Avalon to pursue. Now, only Avalon can reach Mars in a short time. Chapter 477. Deucalion, the battleship from Earth, slowly entered the port of the moon base. This was the first time the Earth Alliance Army battleship approached the moon base without any obstacles. Looking at the surrounding platforms filled with soldiers in Weiss Empire's uniform, they couldn't help but sigh. especially those fully armed Weiss soldiers who were eyeing Deucalion covetously. Darzana, Tsutomu, and the others in the bridge couldn't help but gulp. Behind the wiser soldiers, there were as many as 5 armored cavalry. If these armored cavalry suddenly attacked, Deucalion would definitely be sunk, and he wouldn't be able to resist at all. Fortunately, Deucalion's smooth entry into the port was proof of his safety. Even if the wiser soldiers standing on the surrounding platforms were more hostile than friendly, the crowd standing in front of Deucalion was an important factor in ensuring that Deucalion would not be attacked by the moon base. Deucalion has landed safely. Captain, should we go down now? As Deucalion stopped, Maisu breathed a sigh of relief and looked at Darzana, who had the same expression. Let's go down. They have been waiting for us for a long time. Darzana nodded. After the end of the Battle of the Moon Base, if it were not for the arrival of Deucalion, Avalon might have already gone to Mars and launched an attack on Weiser. With the help of laser communication, when such a smooth battle situation was transmitted back to the headquarters of the Earth Alliance Army, not only did it surprise the remaining senior officers of the Earth Alliance Army, but it also caught Darzana off guard. Darzana, who thought she had a certain understanding of Avalon, never thought that Avalon could capture the moon base that the Earth Alliance Army could not reach with just one ship. In the midst of the shock, during the important moment when the Earth Alliance Army was still rebuilding, she gathered the remaining forces in her hands and sent Deucalion to the moon base in one fell swoop. Her Majesty Euphemia, Her Royal Highness Princess Isilaram, Knight Commander Ray Minkai. Long time no see. Darzana led Maisu and the others to salute Euphemia, Ray Minkai, Isilaram, and the others who welcomed Deucalion to the moon base. Thank you for your hard work. Captain Darzana, I believe that this journey to space will not be an easy one. Euphemia glanced at the light spacesuits Darzana and the others were wearing and smiled. This was the first time the Earth Alliance Army sent their main battleship-level forces into space. Therefore, in terms of personnel protective equipment, they were not as good as the Weiser Empire, which was already familiar with the space environment. Darzana was stunned for a moment before she understood. Unlike the people who were dressed to welcome Deucalion, the spacesuits worn by Darzana and the others were a bit of a wet blanket. You're right. Captain Darzana, thank you for your hard work. Now, the war between Weiss and Earth had ended. Therefore, you are the first guest to visit the lunar base since it was built. Therefore, please rest assured, in the name of Ethelum, I assure you that you will not be harassed by any hostile behavior on the moon base. Ethelum stepped forward and made a promise. This promise was not for Darzana and the others, but for the Weiss soldiers who were watching Deucalion's arrival. With Ethelum's promise, the hostile gazes from the surroundings decreased a lot. This also made Darzana feel slightly relieved. It could be seen that Avalon and Ethelum had indeed controlled the moon base. Therefore, under the leadership of Ethelum, Euphemia, and the others, a simple welcome party began. However, before the welcome party, Darzana and the others still needed to change out of their spacesuits. Half an hour later, Darzana and the other officers were personally received by Ethelum, while Gaizuka Shuel looked around and found Juhu Koichiro drinking alone in the corner. He immediately went to find him. Captain Juhu, congratulations. Standing in front of Juhu Koichiro, Gaizuka Shuel smiled gently. Juhu Koichiro, who was drinking, looked up and saw Gaizuka Shuel in front of him. He was a little surprised. Warrant Officer Gaizuka, aren't you following the captain? No, the captain doesn't need me now. Also, I have something to confirm with you. Gaizuka Shuel waved his hand, indicating that a small warrant officer like him was not suitable for Darzana's current environment. Yubei Koichiro glanced at the situation on Esilam and Darzana's side, smiled, and then raised his glass to Jietsuka Snow. Say it, Warrant Officer Gaizuka. What do you want to know? Let's be honest first. I didn't play any role in this battle. I just stayed around the ship to escort it. Juhu Koichiro did not hesitate to say that he did not obtain any commendable achievements in the Battle of the Moon Base, which surprised Gaizuka Shuel. Before Deucalion set sail, The victory of the moon base battle had already spread to all corners of the Earth Alliance Army headquarters. Especially Juhu Koichiro, who participated in this battle, the battle deeds of Enisale and Netsun Yunko were the most important. Captain Juhu, you didn't get any military achievements? It can't be. That body with mysterious power can't do it. Enisale and Yunko didn't get any? Puzzled, Gaizuka Shue asked one question after another. But he was interrupted by the picture played on the tablet in Juhu Koichiro's hand. Let's take a look first. Juhu Koichiro did not explain, and just like Gaizuka, Shue watched it first. Puzzled, Gaizuka Shue took the tablet from Juhu Koichiro's hand, and then his attention was attracted by the image on the screen. It was not difficult to see from the picture that the location of this video should be near the moon base. Moreover, one of the bodies that appeared on the screen must be the iron armor cavalry of the Mars-Weiss Empire. The body that was besieged by the orbital knight is the special body of the knight, the raging flame demon sword. That mech is the strongest power that the knight commander possesses. Taking a sip of wine, Juhu Koichiro pointed to the center of the screen, the body that was besieged by the orbital knight, and said, Rei Minkai is the body of the knight. Under Gaizuka Shue's surprised gaze, the raging flame demon sword in the picture raised the long sword in his hand, and the brilliance also quietly descended. Then, in the dazzling brilliance, the iron armor cavalry that besieged the raging flame demon sword disappeared like a paper doll that could be easily destroyed. There was no longer the arrogant attitude that forced the Earth Alliance army to the road of destruction in an instant. How is this possible? The shocking power that erupted from the raging flame demon sword made Gaizuka Shue unable to believe his eyes. This is possible. Juhu Koichiro shook the wine glass in his hand and then pointed to himself. The alpha that I am piloting now can also do this to a certain extent. It's just that my level should at least be as close as possible to the knight. Captain Juhu, you can also do it? Gaizuka Shue subconsciously opened his eyes wide. The power displayed by the raging flame demon sword was already amazing enough. Juhu Koichiro, this drunkard can also do this? I can't do it now. After the battle, the knight mentioned to me that as long as I improve my level in a certain aspect, I may also be able to know. It's just that it's still unknown. Juhu Koichiro laughed, while taking back the tablet from Gaizuka Shue's hand and seemingly unintentionally changed the topic. That's right. Warrant Officer Gaizuka, I'm afraid that someone has taken a fancy to your younger brother. What? Take a fancy to him? Who is it? As soon as his beloved younger brother was mentioned, Gaizuka Shue's attention immediately changed. It seems to be a doctor called Royd. He is a body development expert. The Raging Flame Demon Sword was also designed by him. Body development expert. Gaizuka Shue was stunned. No matter how smart Gaizuka Ainafan was, he was only a 15-year-old middle school student. How could he be taking a fancy to by an expert who developed a body with abnormal power? Yes, it seems that Dr. Royd and Gaizuka Shue met by chance, and then after a short exchange, the doctor once proposed to the knight that he intended to let Gaizuka Shue study with him. How could it be? Ainafan is a middle school student. How could he come into contact with such a confidential matter so quickly? Will ordinary middle school students still drive armored cavalry to fight on the battlefield? Warrant Officer Gaizuka. Juhu Koichiro shook the wine glass that had been emptied unknowingly, shook his head and said, Moreover, on Avalon, there are body experts about the same age as Gaizuka Shue. They are also one of the contributors to the development of the Raging Flame Demon Sword. One of them is said to be the younger sister of the knight. Gaizuka Shue, who was repeatedly shocked by Juhu Koichiro's words, didn't know what to say for a while. Or rather, Gaizuka Shue's heart hadn't fully reacted yet. If, as Juhu Koichiro said, Dr. Royd really took a fancy to Gaizuka Shue Ainafan and really invited him to join that ship, doesn't it mean that they brother and sister, who depended on each other for survival, are going to be separated from each other? Gaizuka Shue's face became more and more gloomy. This made Juhu Koichiro touch his head helplessly, subconsciously wondering if he had inadvertently poked the brother and sister's sore spot. Captain Juhu, well, do you know where Ainafan is now? Did he come to this welcome party? Suddenly, Gaizuka Shue's questions came again. Gaizuka Shue doesn't seem to be here. You also know, according to his character, he won't like the atmosphere here. Juhu Koichiro thought for a while and gave an answer. Maybe Gaizuka Shue is in Neku of Avalon? In the blink of an eye, Gaizuka Shue turned around and left the welcome party, walking quickly toward Neku. Watching Gaizuka Shue's back disappear behind the door, Juhu Koichiro shrugged helplessly. Did this brother and sister think too highly of each other? According to the feelings he experienced during this period of time in Avalon, Juhu Koichiro had a good impression of everyone on Avalon. Not only Euphemia, who was the monarch, but also Rei Minkai, who was the leader of the frontline combatants, gave Juhu Koichiro and the Earth Alliance army a different open-minded feeling. The leadership's decisions were decisive, and their goals were clear. Everything was to serve the ultimate goal. Everyone was ordered to work as hard as they could towards the goal they had set, until they achieved it. Such an atmosphere of single-minded effort for the goal really made Juhu Koichiro admire them. If this Avalon didn't belong to a monarch, would he betray them and go there? Juhu Koichiro looked down at the empty wine glass and smiled. Let's have a drink first. Humley should be parting with me again soon. The welcome party was still going on. But Gaizuka Shue, who was worried about her brother, quickly came to the dock where Avalon was. Please wait. This is a port temporarily requisitioned by the Britannia Empire. No one is allowed to enter without permission. However, at the door of the dock, Gaizuka Shue was stopped by Avalon's guards. I am Gaizuka Inafan's sister, Gaizuka Shue. May I ask if Gaizuka Ainafan is on Avalon? I want to see him. Gaizuka Shue took a breath, stood 2 meters away, and took the initiative to make a request. For some reason, after Gaizuka Shue mentioned Gaizuka Inafan's name, the guards' expressions suddenly became a little subtle, but they didn't say anything. Chapter 478. In the huge and empty underground space, a glimmer of light suddenly rose. Along with the rise of this faint light, the flat ground of this underground space lit up one after another. Some were round, and some were straight lines. When these lines lit up, they seemed to come alive and continued to extend outward until they intersected with other lines. Finally, they formed a huge circular pattern with a brighter light source at the key intersection of the top, bottom, left, and right of this pattern. The moment this huge circular pattern completely appeared, a dazzling sun rose in this underground space, dispersing the darkness that had shrouded this underground space for a long time. Under the light, several figures quietly appeared in this underground space. Pa! The sound of metal falling to the ground awakened everyone who had yet to recover from the blurred consciousness caused by the teleportation of the hyperspace gate. This is Weiss. The dual feeling of weightlessness and blurred consciousness made the well-trained Weiss soldiers unable to recover for a long time. But Remurina, who was the weakest among them, still clenched her teeth tightly and insisted on maintaining her consciousness. Princess, we're here. Fianna, who looked weak on the outside, but was actually the strongest among them, bent down and reminded Remurina after looking at the surrounding scenery. Remurina, who was barely maintaining her consciousness and not fainting, nodded reluctantly. But before she could say a few words, a burst of applause suddenly sounded from the darkness beside her. I'm really surprised. I didn't expect the delicate Princess Remurina to be able to persevere and complete the teleportation of the hyperspace gate. Kacha! Kacha! The sudden sound made the confused soldiers suddenly wake up, and at the same time, they subconsciously raised the rifles in their hands and aimed in the direction of the sound source. Stop! This is not an enemy. Remurina raised her right hand forcefully and signaled the soldiers behind her not to panic, then looked in the direction of the sound source. It's been a long time, Miss Q. How long has it been since the last time we met? Amidst the brisk laughter, a figure whose every movement caused the soldiers behind Remurina to subconsciously relax their fingers on the triggers slowly appeared from the darkness and stepped into the huge circular pattern. The brilliance caused by the teleportation of the hyperspace gate slowly faded until only a glimmer that could illuminate most of the underground space was left. Under this faint light, everyone could see that the charming figure that appeared before them was actually a beautiful woman wearing a red dress. Judging from the words and actions of this beautiful woman, she seemed to have a good relationship with Remurina, and she was the enemy Ray Minkai was chasing after, Miss Q. About a year. I didn't think that Princess Lemurina, who couldn't move freely under the gravity well, could still complete the teleportation through the hyperspace gate. Miss Q moved her long legs and stopped in front of Remolina. She sized up Remolina's stubbornness in not fainting. Yes, although I admire your willpower, Princess Lemurina, you should be at your limit now. Why don't you go back and rest for a while? We'll talk about this later. While persuading Remulina to go back and rest, Miss Q moved her gaze. After pausing on Fianna's face for a while, she moved her gaze again and finally landed on the unconscious Serene. This is the night you chose, Princess Lemurina? Yes, this is my night. When Remulina said the word night, her voice was loud and clear. Hey, interesting. Miss Q's gaze wandered around Serene's body a few times. Then she revealed a meaningful smile. However, she had no intention of staying here any longer. Your Highness, please follow me. The room has been prepared for you. But Remulina didn't care about resting. She looked at Miss Q and asked a very important question. Miss Q, how is the princess condition? Miss Q smiled and said confidently, the condition is very good. Everything is in line with our expectations. That's good. On the moon base, the Orbit Knight's expression is also very good. However, it's a pity. There's nothing to pity. Now that your Highness is back, you can have as many Orbit Knight as you want, right? Fianna saw Miss Q's performance, but she remained silent for the most part. The moment Miss Q appeared, Fianna confirmed that the woman in front of her was the mission target of Ray Minkai's operation this time. Moreover, Fianna also knew that the woman in front of her, who also had the ability to travel between different worlds, might see through her identity. Therefore, maintaining the necessary silence at this moment was the most important thing. Fortunately, Miss Q's attention seemed to be on Remulina and Serene. As for Fianna and the two soldiers behind her, perhaps she just regarded them as minions that could be seen everywhere, lurking and waiting for an opportunity. Fianna, who silently pushed the wheelchair for Remulina, secretly made a decision. At the same time, in the dock of the moon base, Avalon had completed all the preparations to set sail. This time, Fermion did not follow Islam to Weiss. Instead, she chose to stay at the moon base and preside over the reconstruction mission here. Also, Count Colludio, who had just woken up from a coma, stayed with her. Thanks to Ray Minkai's mercy, Colludio's injuries were not too serious. However, he still could not move on his own for a short period of time and could only rely on the wheelchair to move around. Even so, Colludio's expression was one of relief and joy. I didn't expect there to be a second princess hidden in this base. Count Zasbrum hid this matter very well. Sitting in the wheelchair and watching Avalon slowly leave the moon base, Colludio was both emotional and regretful. He lamented the fact that the weak bloodline of the Weiss Empire had welcomed a new member. He also regretted his own dullness. For 15 long years, he had been unable to see through the truth of the second princess that Zasbarum had hidden. In Colludio's opinion, if he could see through Zasbrum's mask, the two heirs of the Weiss Empire would not be at each other's throats now. However, Colludio's thinking was too naive. Even if Colludio saw through Zasbrum's mask in time, he would not be able to do anything. Among the 37 orbital knights in the entire Earth-Moon orbit, at least half of them supported Zasbrum. Otherwise, in the original plot, Serene, as an outsider, was able to command all the orbital knights in a short period of time because Zasbrum's legacy was enough for Serene to have such a rallying power. Therefore, even if Collutio saw through Zasbrum's mask, he would never end up better than his original fate. No matter what, our sovereign now is only Her Royal Highness Princess Etheram Visser Elugia. Firmian, who was standing next to him, said this sentence softly but firmly. This was undoubtedly an oath, and it also completely drew a clear line between herself and the Weiss Empire on Mars. Collutio's expression instantly became interesting, but soon he calmed down. Islam had already told the two Orbital Knight about the hyperspace gate hidden under the moon base. Therefore, Avalon's trip to Mars was undoubtedly a crusade against Remulina, and it might even escalate into a war for the throne. Thinking of this, Collutio sighed slowly. Collutio, who had yet to recover from his serious injuries, suddenly felt an unbearable fatigue. Sorry, Count Firmian. Now you can only manage the moon base for the time being. My body has really reached its limit. Even if the Knight Captain was merciful. Firmian nodded. Leave it to me, Count Collutio. Just focus on healing. On the other side, Deucalion, who had left the port first, quietly waited in orbit for Avalon to leave the port. Captain, are you sure you don't want to call back Judo, Koichiro, Inazuka Inafane, and Netsun Yunko? Kara looked at the beautiful battleship with dazzling light wings and asked softly. No, let them maintain the status quo. The senior officials at the headquarters only asked us to call back Captain Judo and the others out of concern. Darzana remembered that when Deucalion left for the moon base in an emergency, some senior officials hinted to Darzana to find a way to let Judo Koichiro bring the body named Hume back to the headquarters. Darzana couldn't help but sneer at this. Now that Weiss had launched a counterattack, who was the one who contributed the most? Can't you see it clearly? No, it wasn't that they couldn't see it clearly, but the power of the system on Hume was too tempting. From the combat video obtained by Judo Koichiro, the power of the fiery demon sword, which seemed to be several levels higher than Hume, instantly killed many Orbital Knight. It was enough to make the Earth Alliance army, which was suppressed by the Weiss Empire, obsessed. However, the upper echelons who dared to reach out to this terrifying force had never thought that the Weiss Empire, this jackal, would be beaten down and another fierce tiger would appear. With this in mind, not only did Darzana ignore the hints of some higher-ups, but she also sent an application to the Earth Alliance headquarters as Captain Deucalion that she must follow Avalon and participate in the crusade against Mars Vizia. However, it was rejected. Moreover, the reason for the rejection made Darzana unable to refute it. It would take too long to go to Mars. It was so long that the Earth Alliance headquarters couldn't make up their mind to let Deucalion, a battleship that still maintained considerable combat power, leave Earth and go to the distant Mars. In desperation, Darzana could only make the decision to maintain the status quo and monitor the moon base from Earth-Moon orbit. Avalon, complete departure. It is now heading to the scheduled orbit. Keiru's voice sounded again. Send a communication request to Avalon. Avalon Bridge. Teresa was directing the bridge personnel to carry out the final inspection before departure to Mars. Euphemia, Ray Minkai, and Ethelum stayed behind and watched the busy personnel on the bridge. Captain Knight, now Mars and Earth are at the farthest distance. Why are you in such a hurry to cross such a long distance to go to Mars without making any preparations? Ethelum's question was natural, but it was natural for the humans in this world. But for Avalon, this distance was as simple as opening the door and walking out. Princess Ethelum. Avalon doesn't care about the distance between Mars and Earth, and Avalon has already made all the preparations for what the princess is worried about. Therefore, Princess Ethelum, you only need to sit in the guest seat and wait for the arrival of Avalon's departure. Ray Minkai didn't explicitly say that Avalon was a space battleship that could perform space jumps. For the humans in this world, the only time they could get close to the black technology related to space jumps was during the short period of time when the hyperspace door from the ancient civilization on Mars to the moon went out of control and caused a catastrophe. In such a short period of time, Even the top human scholars who worked so hard to decipher the technology of space jumps could only sigh helplessly. The relics left by the ancient civilization were too far away from the current technological level of humans on Earth. It was so far away that the humans in this world couldn't analyze much of it, even if they exhausted the current level of technology. Therefore, for the space age, humans on Earth, and even Visser on Mars, only had the impression of an era of spaceflight that first accelerated and then decelerated. Ethelum didn't understand where the confidence on Rei Minkai's face came from, and after she observed the expressions of Euphemia and Teresa, she came to a conclusion. Rei Minkai and the others really had the confidence to reach Mars in a short period of time. Captain, the entire system has passed the inspection, and Avalon is on standby. Teresa looked at Euphemia and Rei Minkai and waited for their orders. However, at this time, a communication request from Deucalion sounded. Connect. Teresa. Avalon still has plenty of time to spare. Euphemia said. Understood. The next moment, Darzana's voice sounded. Avalon, this is Deucalion. He's talking to you right now. This is Avalon. Deucalion, please speak. Rei Minkai motioned for Teresa to not speak and let him be in charge of the call with Deucalion. Rei, is this the captain of the night? I'm Darzana. Are you ready for the trip? When Darzana heard Rei Minkai's voice, she seemed to be a little surprised. We're fully prepared. What a pity. We can't fight together with Deucalion. Yes, what a pity. But at least Deucalion can still send Avalon off. Darzana's words made Rei Minkai, Euphemia, and Teresa smile knowingly. This was because Deucalion's send-off was probably going to end here. Captain Darzana, thank you and Deucalion for your good intentions. Now we Avalon will go to Mars. Deucalion, please distance yourself from Avalon to avoid being involved in the aftermath. Teresa's warning made Darzana frown, but she still did as she was told. Aftermath? What aftermath? Avalon's propulsion engine can affect Deucalion 1,000 meters away. With this doubt, Darzana saw the most shocking scene in her life. The light wings on both sides of Avalon's hull slowly unfolded, and the huge main wings slowly split into 4 pairs of ailerons. Bolts of lightning jumped out and wildly jumped in the gaps between the ailerons, wantonly stretching out the distorted body and emitting a hidden force that was difficult to detect. Under the influence of this force, a light pattern like a flower bud quietly appeared at the front of Avalon, as if a flower was growing and blooming. It grew from small to large and directly bloomed, and a light pattern wrapped around Avalon from head to toe. The moment this flower of light bloomed at its most beautiful, Avalon's figure suddenly turned into a stream of light and disappeared. Tone. Uncontrollably, Darzana suddenly stood up from her seat. The shock in front of her made Darzana's astute brain pause for a moment, and then the moment she recovered, she blurted out a term. Space jump. Chapter 479. Perhaps there would be many first-time experiences in life. Long before Athyllum was born, humans on Earth relied on the hyperspace gate discovered on the Moon to complete a distant journey of hundreds of thousands of kilometers. 15 years ago, when Ethelum was born, the hyperspace gate that allowed humans to colonize other planets went out of control due to the internal war of the human race. So far, Ethyllum, the first princess of the Weiss Empire, only had a certain impression of the space jump. But now, what Ethyllum never expected was that today, 15 years after the loss of the hyperspace gate, when the crusade that was about to involve the Weiss Empire was launched, she really experienced the space jump that only existed in the Weiss Empire's archives. It was a feeling that was difficult to describe. It was as if, just in a blink of an eye, the blue planet under her feet had become a familiar crimson planet. The unreal feeling made Ethyllum's consciousness slightly hazy, but she was soon awakened by the little maid, Adelizo, who had been standing beside her. Your Highness, are you okay? When the loyal little maid saw her princess acting strangely, she immediately asked worriedly. In her opinion, the reason for the sudden change in the scenery outside the bridge was the reason for Ethylem's strangeness. "No, I'm fine. Adelizo." Ethylam collected her slightly scattered gaze, comforted her little maid, and looked at Ray Minkai and Euphemia standing next to her. "Knight Captain, Your Highness, this is why Avalon, and even you, are confident that you can reach Mars in a short time, right? Is this a space jump?" After Ray Minkai and Euphemia looked at each other and smiled, Ray Minkai responded, "Yes. Avalon has a space jump engine that can perform long-distance space travel. The distance between Earth and Mars is just a small test of its prowess." After hearing Ray Minkai's admission, Ethylam nodded slightly, but her expression was not surprised. After being in contact with Ray Minkai and Euphemia for a long time, Ethylam had keenly captured that Ray Minkai and Euphemia were hiding some key things. Right now, this space battleship that was powerful enough to break through the defense line made by the Orbital 37 Night Alliance alone was probably not its final form. Ethylam nodded slightly and moved her eyes to the main screen that had already included Mars in the picture. "That is my hometown, Mars Weiss." A wry smile appeared on Ethylam's face when she talked about her hometown. "If it weren't for the current situation, maybe I could hold a welcome party for your majesty and Knight Captain in my home. There is still a welcome party in the future. Now, let's solve the problem in front of us first." Euphemia waved her hand, indicating that Ethylam did not have to worry about these things, and looked at Ray Minkai again. "Kai, is there any news from Fianna?" Ray Minkai shook his head. "Not yet. Neither I nor White Cat Zero received any message from Fianna. It seems that we still need to wait a little longer." Captain Teresa, who had been waiting for the order for a long time, nodded and then raised her hand. "Avalon, launch the Utopia system. Enter the synchronous orbit of Mars. Full ship, level 2 combat ready." At this moment, the humans in Weiss didn't know that above Weiss's head, there was a space warship from another world quietly waiting for a signal. Weiss Palace. Under the service of the maids, Fianna changed into the Earl's exclusive red uniform and followed the maids all the way to a garden shrouded in light. It was a garden with some unknown flowers and a small number of green plants. According to some of the information that Fianna learned during the short period of time, these plants were undoubtedly rare and could even be described as precious for Mars Weiss. This was not only because of the dry climate of Mars and the lack of water, but also because it could not provide a warm climate for plants to grow. In order to maintain a constant temperature for plants, the technology used in this garden was probably designed and improved based on the thermostatic greenhouses built on Earth. The light from the dome was proof of that. "Fianna, the knight's outfit suits you very well." When Fianna stepped into the garden, the figure sitting in the pavilion in the center of the garden noticed Fianna's arrival. "Sorry for making a fool of myself. Princess Ethylam." Fianna saluted the figure sitting in the center of the garden. The person sitting in the pavilion was Princess Reina, but her appearance was still the appearance of Ethylam. This was also an action taken in order to smoothly enter the Weiss Imperial Palace, which represented the center of power of the Weiss Empire. Before Reina achieved her goal of controlling the Weiss Imperial Palace, the disguise was necessary. "Get up, my knight." While Reina let Fianna get up, she also looked at the maids standing around. Under her gaze, the maids bowed one after another before retreating from the garden in an orderly manner, leaving the space for Remurina and Fianna. "Princess." Fianna looked around and knew that Remurina probably had something important to discuss with her. "Come here, Fianna." Looking at Fianna walking to her side, Remurina nodded slightly. "Fianna, how do you feel about return to Weiss?" Fianna was silent for a moment, but she still shook her head. "This place, to me, is very unfamiliar. I don't remember much about this place." Fianna's answer seemed to be within Reina's expectations. "That's true. After all, since the disaster, the Rant family moved to Earth." Reina smiled slightly. "To be honest, I feel the same. I was born on the moon base, but I've never been to Weiss, nor have I seen Weiss with my own eyes. Therefore, my feelings are probably the same as yours. But now, Weiss may belong to you, Your Royal Highness." Fianna's words made Reyna stunned, but she didn't deny it. Perhaps Fianna didn't know. When Reyna returned to Weiss, under the guidance of Mississippi Q, she saw the first Emperor of Weiss, Regalia Weiss-Le Bass, who was in the audience hall with a red face and full of energy, but was actually lying on a hospital bed, struggling to survive. The first Emperor, who couldn't move and couldn't even look at others, couldn't discover the authenticity of the ethelum that appeared in front of him. He could only rely on a wheelchair to move around. With the help of the mysterious concubine, he slowly sat up, revealed a kind smile, and communicated with the ethelum in his eyes. Reyna would be lying if she said she wasn't nervous during the entire process of communication. Fortunately, the first Emperor's physical condition, as well as the timely help of the mysterious concubine and Mississippi Q, allowed Reyna to survive the crisis of being exposed. After all, even if the holographic projection technology could change a person's original appearance into another person, it couldn't make up for the familiarity and tacit understanding gained after a long time of interaction. Since then, Reyna, who witnessed the first Emperor's physical condition, quietly had a thought that even she couldn't immediately detect. This was also the reason why Reyna didn't deny Fianna's identity. "Fianna, now, His Majesty has temporarily entrusted the authority of regent to me. Can you come with me?" Reyna reached out and took the scepter next to the wheelchair and gestured to Fianna. "Yes, Your Royal Highness." On the other side, Fianna and Remurina's departing figures were seen by two people. "An empire was so easily seized by you. Miss Q, it seems that I still underestimated you." Reynold shifted his gaze from Reyna's back to Miss Q. Reynold didn't know about Miss Q's actions at first. It was just that he was naturally wary of the mysterious concubine. As for Miss Q's hidden intentions, it was only after Reyna came to Mars that Reynold saw some clues from her. It's just a little trick, Mr. Reynold." Miss Q smiled without a care in the world. In response to Reynold's praise, Miss Q was more concerned about the battleship that defeated the Orbit Knight controlled by Reyna. "Mr. Reynold, now we don't have much time. That battleship..." Reynold subconsciously raised his head and looked at the dome that covered the Mars sky. "Yes and no. If my guess is correct, that battleship is just an appetizer. If we slow down a little, a more terrifying enemy will inevitably catch up." Miss Q's gaze became even more cautious when she heard the voice. It was an expression that Reynold had never seen before. "Is that so? Then, Miss Q, you have to move faster." However, even if Reynold saw through it, he couldn't say anything. Reynold was just a passerby that was forcibly brought to this world by Miss Q. Mars on the synchronous orbit. Under the cover of the Utopia system, Avalon collected and analyzed as much as possible through the various communication waves that permeated the sky above Mars, try to find more useful information. Teresa sat in her seat, as usual, and analyzed the information displayed on the projection screen in front of her eyes over and over again. "Captain, abnormality detected." A piece of information intercepted by the radar was quickly placed in front of Teresa. What surprised her was that there was actually a song behind the abnormal data. However, Teresa's doubts disappeared in an instant. This was because she had discovered some clues from the song. Although this song was different from the signal intercepted by Avalon on the moon base, it was surprisingly consistent in some key areas. Especially after Teresa compared the two signals back and forth many times to be safe, the result was the same. "Captain Teresa, did you find anything?" Ray Minkai was so fast. Just after CIC reported the new discovery to him, Ray Minkai rushed to the bridge in a few minutes. "Captain Knight." "Yes. Now, this signal is everywhere in the sky above Mars. Moreover, as time passes, the strength of this signal is constantly increasing and will spread to other channels." Teresa handed the analysis results in her hand to Ray Minkai and briefly explained the current findings. A signal that is constantly increasing in strength and spreading to other channels? This is not interference. Ray Minkai looked at the analysis results in his hand and was a little confused. If it was interference, No one would be so bored as to use a song as interference material, right? Unless there was another purpose. Suddenly, a light flashed in Ray Minkai's mind. Song, all channels, city, these three seemingly unrelated words stimulated Ray Minkai's memory at this moment. In his mind, there was a piece of memory from a long time ago. Ray Minkai vaguely remembered that in a work he read when he was young, there was a similar scene. In a world where human footsteps had spread to the Milky Way, singing was the spiritual support of people and a powerful weapon when facing aliens. Therefore, in this atmosphere, the song that everyone was looking forward to was born. But the moment this song was born, all the humans in the city were controlled. Such a familiar development made Ray Minkai narrow his eyes involuntarily. If the city under his feet really developed like this, would Avalon also encounter similar enemies? Captain Teresa, collect as much information about this song as possible. While this thought was going back and forth in Ray Minkai's mind, Ray Minkai also issued an order to Teresa. Understood. Although Teresa had some doubts, she didn't ask Ray Minkai anything. The battle on the moon base had made Teresa somewhat wary of this song, so she didn't think Ray Minkai's reaction was too much. I don't know what the situation is on Fianna's side. Ray Minkai, who left the bridge, stood on the observation deck and looked at the crimson planet below. His mind began to become active. The timing of Avalon's attack was decided by Fianna. Only when Fianna, who was lurking in Weiss and lurking around key figures, achieved a critical breakthrough would Avalon rapidly descend from the synchronous orbit and launch an attack. Therefore, Fianna's behavior was very important to Avalon. Ray Minkai didn't want to recklessly launch an attack on Weiss's capital city without knowing anything. Chapter 480. The moment the red Earl uniform appeared, the Weiss soldiers walking around the aisle immediately turned around and saluted in unison. This was the newly appointed Countess of Princess Ethelum, who had just seen the power of regent from the first emperor. From the moment she was announced as the new countess, some of the older Weiss people knew who the new countess with the name of Rant was. The name of Rant once again sounded in the sky above Weiss. Countess Fianna, Countess Fianna, Countess Fianna. Wherever Fianna passed, everyone bowed in salute. Especially now that the orbital knight, with a large number of troops, had been defeated by Avalon. Every countess was an indispensable combat force for Weiss. Because of this factor, after Fianna took the scepter from Rant, she relied on this uniform to walk back and forth in the Weiss capital in the name of inspection. Of course, these inspections were really to inspect the situation in the capital. They were not specifically selected to inspect the departments related to military power. After several days of inspection, seeing Fianna struggling with the issues of production and people's livelihood, some people who could not guard against her finally breathed a sigh of relief. Because today, Fianna finally went to the factory area where the armored cavalry was produced under the command of Princess Ethelum to receive the new Countess' new body. Countess Fianna, please follow me. Looking at the valiant Fianna, the person in charge of this factory area could not help but have a good impression of her. Yes, please. Fianna's gaze moved around the factory area without leaving a trace. This was the first time she came to this area, and it was also the area that Avalon focused on. In order to smoothly step into this area without attracting attention, Fianna wandered back and forth in other areas for several days, forcing the people who were wary of the new countess to make a request to Rant, who was in charge. How many people work here? Fianna boarded the car prepared by the person in charge while looking around at the Weiss people walking back and forth in the factory area. About 100,000. The person in charge's answer surprised Fianna. As a factory area for the production of armored cavalry, it could actually accommodate 100,000 people. The population of Weiss was less than 1 million, and this factory district could accommodate 1/10 of the population. However, Vessi's iron cavalry was not an assembly line product. As if seeing Fianna's confusion, the person in charge immediately explained. In fact, this factory area doesn't only produce iron cavalry. While producing iron cavalry, it also produces other materials, such as synthetic food. With this explanation, Fianna understood. This factory area was not only the source of power for the Martian Knight, but also the source of supplies for the citizens of the Weiss Empire. While thinking, Fianna subconsciously looked at the dome. I'm afraid this factory district is going to be in trouble. An imperceptible miniature signal transmitter quietly rolled into the sewer next to the car as it made a turn. The door opened. The soft sound of rubber tires on the cold ground echoed in the pitch-black room. The light that shone into the room from outside the door caused the young man's eyelids to twitch slightly, but he did not wake up. How can you treat Serene like this? Remulina looked at Serene, whose hands were hung up, but his clothes were still intact, and shouted coldly. The cold voice made the Weiss soldiers outside shudder. At the same time, they rushed into the room and knelt down in front of Remulina. No, Your Highness Princess Islam. We didn't mean to hurt Serene Troyat. It's just that, when he was awake, he constantly displayed an extremely strong desire to attack. In order to calm him down, we can only use this method. At the end, the Weiss soldiers gradually lost their voices. In fact, there were many ways to control a person. However, these two Weiss soldiers had chosen to sacrifice their lives for them. Guards, take them away. Remulina coldly announced the fate of the two Weiss soldiers in front of her. In the hazy dream, Serene seemed to have lost his sense of pain. All that was left was a warm touch. Yes, it was the warmth that Serene felt in his hopeless world after the death of his father, Count Troyat. Yes, it was the warmth of Islam. Only she would not care that Serene Troyat was a human from Earth. She was the only one who would not wantonly despise and abuse him like the others. Instead, she treated him kindly and gently. She was the only one who would affectionately squeeze beside him and ask him about everything on Earth. Ethel, 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 Ethel. This was the person that Serene Troyat swore to protect with his life. His Highness Princess, Princess Islam. In the warm dream, Serene let out a sleep talk, which was also heard by Remulina, who was sitting beside him. That's great, royal sister. Looking at Serene, who was immersed in the dream and unwilling to wake up, a trace of jealousy rose in Remulina's heart. This young man, who was born on Earth, had such deep feelings and loyalty towards Ethelum. Even those Orbit Knight who claimed to be loyal to the Weiss royal family had betrayed Islam, and Serene Troyat, in the eyes of the Weiss people, was undoubtedly a time bomb that could betray them at any time, but he was the most loyal person from the beginning to the end. This world was a joke. Gradually, a mocking smile appeared on Remulina's face. Other than Serene Troyat, there was no one else loyal to the first emperor of the Weiss Empire, right? Princess Islam. Perhaps seeing that Remulina had been in the room for a long time, the Weiss soldiers who had just been replaced were a bit worried and cautiously reminded her. Is something the matter? Remulina moved her gaze and looked outside the door. Yes, Your Highness Princess. Serene Troyat had attacked others in a frenzy before, and on the way, he was shouting some words. So, for your safety, Your Highness, please don't stay by his side for too long. Talk. Remulina did not care much about the soldier's advice. What she cared about was the soldier's description of Serene's behavior when he went berserk. Yes, Your Highness Princess, but those are just some rebellious. Speak. Remulina coldly shouted again. In a panic, the Weiss soldier hurriedly said, Yes, Your Highness Princess. When Serene Troyat went berserk, he said that Princess Islam was not real. That's all. Remulina's gaze changed as she subconsciously looked at the sleeping Serene. Yes, the Weiss soldier's face was filled with fear. He had a part to play in dragging his colleague out just now. He knew very well that if he offended Princess Islam now, the consequences would be terrible. Leave. This is none of your business. Fortunately, Remulina did not care about the Weiss soldier's mistake. After the soldier left the room, Remulina reached out to cover Serene's right hand and sighed in her heart. This loyalty really makes me jealous. Royal sister. Outside the door, a charming figure appeared. Today, I will take this loyal subject away from you. Royal sister. No matter how beautiful the dream was, it would still come to an end. No matter how reluctant Serene was, no matter how hard he tried to persuade her to stay, the Islam that existed in his dream would still leave quietly. Until Serene heard a voice calling out to him again. Serene, 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 Serene. It was a soft and familiar voice. It was the voice that was engraved in Serene's heart. Under the call of the voice that was deeply engraved in his memory, Serene slowly opened his eyes. The moment the light shone into his eyes, Serene resisted it. It was not only because the light was dazzling, but also because the face that appeared under the light was not a face that he was familiar with. Serene, wake up. It was another familiar voice. What was strange was that when the voice sounded, the unfamiliar face had turned into Esilam. AI, Islam. Suddenly, before Serene could call out the name of the face, a soft touch suddenly hit him. The suddenly enlarged face made Serene's eyes widen, and he could not come back to his senses for a long time. This until the familiar voice sounded again. Serene, can you sit up? Princess Islam. The soft touch was still clear, but Serene's brain was still fuzzy, and he could only look at the girl in front of him in a daze. This scene was seen by the two people who were hiding behind the one-way glass. That princess's reaction is really fast. I didn't expect that young man's willpower to be so strong. He can actually hold on under your skills. Leonard had a sarcastic smile on his lips. Miss Q shook her head slightly and did not show a trace of agreement with Leonard's words. That young man has been living in an environment that is hostile to him since he was young. If it wasn't for the existence of Islam, I'm afraid that the young man would have either died or become like you, Leonard. When Leonard heard Miss Q's evaluation of Serene, he was a little dissatisfied. Oh, that young man can become me? Miss Q, don't joke around. Leonard could see some of Serene's background through the scars on Serene's body. But Leonard, who thought highly of himself, did not think that Serene could become him or be on the same level as him. Is that so? Don't underestimate you. Leonard, you know your last failure was because you underestimated the enemy. Miss Q did not care about Leonard's dissatisfaction and pointed out the reason for Leonard's previous failure without mercy. Leonard, who was speechless, only responded with a cold snort. Miss Q did not care about Leonard's reaction. Okay, the knight has pledged his loyalty to the princess. Then, it's time for our plan to be carried out. At a certain moment, Vess's communication channel was quietly filled with singing. As long as one was in the Vess kingdom, the moment they heard this singing, they would stop what they were doing and look in the direction of the singing. Vess Palace. What is this singing? Fianna, who had stayed in the factory area for half a day, was about to return to the palace to report to Riamulina when she suddenly heard the sudden singing. She also saw the people around her, who instantly stopped what they were doing and looked in the direction of the palace in a daze. At this moment, Fianna realized that the time had come. Woo woo woo. The piercing alarm ignited the silent air of Avalon. Everyone who had been on standby immediately moved from their positions and rushed to the battle station the moment the alarm sounded. Your Majesty, Knight Captain, Avalon is going to attack the capital. Ethylam lifted her long skirt and hurried to the bridge. Yes, Princess Ethylam. The situation in the Vess Kingdom is a bit strange now. We must act quickly. Euphemia waved her right hand, and a strange scene suddenly appeared in front of Ethylam. According to the report of our intelligence personnel, the mysterious singing is now pulling the Vess Kingdom into an unknown abyss. Mysterious singing? Ethylam was taken aback and then exclaimed, Is it controlling the singing of the orbital night? I'm afraid so. According to the intelligence, the singing just sounded not long ago. If the time is delayed, perhaps many people won't wake up, just like the orbital night who can't hear your voice. Ray Minkai reached out and tapped on the screen, showing the scene of the people who were confused by the singing and looked in the direction of the Vess Palace. At this moment, Ray Minkai, Euphemia, and even Teresa were waiting for Ethylam's voice. Let's begin. Your Majesty, Knight Captain, I don't know the effect of this singing on the people of Vess, but in order to avoid the tragedy of the orbital night, I ask Her Majesty Euphemia Captain Ray Minkai, and Captain Teresa to begin immediately. Ethylam's decision made Euphemia and Ray Minkai nod in unison and exchange glances. Kai, be careful. Please rest assured, My Majesty, I will return safely. In Ray Minkai's back, Teresa stood up from her seat and waved her hand to order Avalon to launch the landing battle. Avalon descend. Shield the bridge. Level 1 combat state. Target: Vest Kingdom. The landing battle against the Vest Kingdom begin. With the appearance of a streamer, Avalon pierced the red land below from top to bottom like a sharp sword. The flames formed by the friction of the thin atmosphere of Mars wrapped around Avalon as it streaked across the sky, heading straight for King Vice. Chapter 481. Under the powerful attack of the cracking program, the tightly shut door was cracked in a short time. The scene that had been guarded until now was gradually revealed in the eyes of the people from the other world. Vice, an empire built on Mars? Juhu Koichiro looked at the scene in front of him and murmured. The world was changing too quickly. Not long ago, as a soldier of the Earth Alliance Army, Juhu Koichiro was still fighting against the invasion from Vice on Earth. He never thought that there would be an opportunity to set foot on Vice territory. Moreover, it would happen in such a short time. Captain Juhu, take your team and control the factory area as quickly as possible. According to the intelligence, there seems to be a large number of armored cavalry and Vice weapon production lines in the factory area. Ray Minkai's voice sounded. At the same time, the roaring flame demon sword also appeared in front of the door. In addition, on the left and right sides of the roaring flame demon sword, armored vehicles filled with special forces from Avalon were quickly attacking the targets assigned to them. Understood. Knight Captain. Juhu Koichiro glanced at the roaring flame demon sword that slowly retracted its light wings, turned his head, and pressed the communication button. Mustana 22, Mustana 33. Sorry, I am the commander of this operation. Is there a problem? No. Inuzuka Ainafan put the tablet in her hand back into the storage compartment and shifted her gaze to Alpha in the screen. Lambda drive system. Very interesting system. Yes. Captain Juhu, please give the order. Netbun Yunko's spirit seemed to be a little scattered, but in the end, she forced herself to wake up from the unreal feeling of the space jump and threw herself into the battle. Watching Juhu Koichiro leave with Inuzuka Ainafan and Netbun Yunko, the White Cat State Zero shook its head slightly. Can they really do it? Although the city seems to be controlled by the song now. But there are still risks. What's more, those people may be at risk of being controlled by the song. Indeed. So we have to speed up. The sooner we reach the palace, the lower the risk will be. The roaring flame demon sword raised his right hand and gestured to Avalon behind him. Then, he jumped into the Vice capital and took the lead to attack the Vice palace. On Avalon, Ethellam had already changed into a protective suit. With the help of the female officers around her, she stepped onto the Lionheart Knight, driven by Xia Yufeng. Princess Islam, please come this way. Xia Yufeng, who was standing in the cockpit, guided Athylam to the temporary seat next to the driver's seat. Your Highness, it may be a little uncomfortable, but please forgive me. No, this was a special period. Please don't mind me. Yes, you are? Ethellam shook her head, indicating that Xia Yufeng didn't need to care about her feelings. At the same time, she realized that she didn't know Xia Yufeng's name. Xia Yufeng, that's my name. In addition, my sister, Xia Yulan, was among the people who participated in covering Princess Islam's entry into the palace. After making all the preparations, Xia Yufeng reached out and gave a thumbs up to the female officers who were waiting outside the cockpit and ready to deal with emergencies. Then, as the female officers retreated, the cockpit closed. As the cockpit closed, the spherical cockpit used by the Lionheart Knight was also activated. In the blink of an eye, the screens in front and behind Ethellam all turned into the scenery of Avalon and Neku. This was the first time Ethellam had seen such a scenery. Is this Her Majesty Euphemia's Iron Knight? Yes, it is. Please sit tight. Your Highness Princess Islam. Now, it's our turn to strike. The vanguard troops that entered the capital first had all set off. Next, it was the escort team of the twins, Xia Yufeng and Xia Yulan, that set off. Captain, Your Majesty, all the teams have set off successfully. Now, the knight's roaring flame demon sword has also entered the palace's air defense network, but it has not been stopped. As countless information gathered in the Avalon Bridge, Teresa and Euphemia also silently looked at the slightest change on the map. Your Majesty, it seems that the city is really controlled by that song. Not to mention the special forces, even the roaring flame demon sword that openly flew over the city turn a blind eye. The situation in this city is very strange. Teresa seemed to have a bad premonition in her heart. Especially the closer the roaring flame demon sword was to Wiser Palace, the stronger the premonition in her heart. It was as if, in the near future, something she did not want to see would happen. Yes, but now we can only continue to attack. As long as the enemy is still hiding in this city, they will never sit by and watch our attack. Captain, let's proceed according to plan. Teresa nodded and threw away all the doubts in her heart. Indeed, Euphemia was right. Now was the best opportunity to force the enemy out. Order. Launch missile slots 1 to 22. Target all factory areas. Under Teresa's order, the missile that had been ready for a long time soared into the air and flew over the city according to the signal transmission source that Fianna had secretly arranged. When it was 1,000 meters away from the target, it suddenly jumped high, turned around, and plunged into its target. Boom, boom, boom. The white smoke that streaked across the sky above the capital was the prelude to the destruction of the factory areas that the Wiser Kingdom relied on for its livelihood. The loud roars continued to ring in the sky above the capital, but they could not cancel out the song that was still ringing. No matter how loud the explosions were, no matter how terrifying the flames that soared into the sky, they could not suppress the waves of the song. Moreover, strangely, when the missiles attacked, the people of Wiser who were controlled by the song ignored the Britannia special forces that rushed past them, ignored the roaring airframes, and ignored the white smoke that swept across the sky above the city. In the eyes of the people of Wiser, it was as if only the Wiser Palace with the mysterious song existed. TSK. Those people are gathering at the palace. The moment the raging flame demon sword in the sky approached the Wiser Palace, it suddenly stopped. Because, on the road below, people wearing Wiser clothes were rushing from all directions and gathering at the Wiser Palace. In less than half an hour, the road in front of the palace was filled with a sea of people. If a battle were to break out here at this time, the first to die would be the people who crowded the road. Human shields? White Cat State Zero lowered its head and looked at the constantly surging people below. I don't know, but now, I'm afraid we can't move as we please. TSK. That woman really has a good idea. White Cat State Zero was also very unhappy. In the palace, Leonard and Ray Minkai also frowned slightly when they saw the people crowding the front and back of the palace. While puzzled, he also looked at the fiery red woman standing beside him. Miss Q, is this your plan? Use these people to stop the ship's advance? Miss Q turned her gaze and smiled gently. Her expression was very calm, without a trace of remorse. Why not? What we need now is time. As long as we can achieve this goal, what's wrong with using it at will? Leonard was silent for a moment, but soon he turned and left. Wait, Leonard, where do you want to go? Don't forget, you lost to that person before. Now, that person is piloting that body and appearing in the sky above the palace. Miss Q called out to Ray Minkai and pointed at the raging flame demon sword on the screen. The enemy is catching up. So what? I have some debts that I need to settle with that person. Leonard's footsteps did not stop, but left step by step, until Leonard's footsteps disappeared into the depths of the aisle. Miss Q sighed secretly. Leonard, your airframe is still far from stable. More and more people gathered around the palace, to the point that they could crush the main gate of the kingdom. The surging flow of people rushed towards the square of the palace that was completely unobstructed. After a few minutes, They rushed towards the second gate that led to the depths of the palace. However, at the moment when the surging crowd was about to rush to the second gate, a terrible impact suddenly erupted from the depths of the palace and blasted the second gate that was blocked by the surging crowd. In the blink of an eye, the shattered gate and the blasted humans became the main characters of this moment. Boom! The ear-piercing roar immediately attracted Rei Minkai's attention. Kai, look, that's the fallen angel. No, that's not right. It seemed a little different. The sharp-eyed white cat state Zero immediately saw the general appearance of the culprit that blasted the second gate. However, there was an obvious difference in the familiar shape of the mecha body. However, Rei Minkai was as confused as the white cat state Zero, because he knew that the body that appeared in front of him was the fallen angel, and the person who was piloting this body was the long-missing Leonard. The brilliance of the lambda drive system quietly bloomed amidst the clouds of dust raised by the debris. In the open space where the surging crowd of humans was blasted out by the explosion, the fallen angel rose. The fallen angel slowly rose into the air and confronted the roaring flame demon sword from afar. Fallen angel! The confrontation in the sky above the palace was immediately locked onto by Avalon. Looking at the fallen angel that appeared on the main screen, Teresa suddenly stood up and exclaimed, "Leonard Testarossa." Teresa's exclamation reached Rei Minkai's ears. At the same time, Rei Minkai also sent a light signal to the fallen angel that appeared in front of him. "Oomph. Put away your little tricks. That's right. I am Leonard Testarossa. Long time no see, Mr. Knight." Looking at the light signal sent by the roaring flame demon sword, Leonard sneered and took the initiative to mock the roaring flame demon sword. "Long time no see, Leonard. I didn't expect you to really come to this world." Rei Minkai glanced at the communication signal that he kept in contact with Avalon and casually replied, "Yeah, it's been so long that I almost forgot that my subordinates were killed by you." As soon as Leonard's hateful words fell, the fallen angel raised his hands like lightning and pulled and released the roaring flame demon sword. The brilliance of the lambda drive system disappeared in a flash. A rippling force field suddenly lit up in front of the roaring flame demon sword. The fallen angel's invisible arrow failed again. Even though the fallen angel's attack was almost impossible to guard against, Rei Minkai, who had fought with him before, had already seen through the tricks of the fallen angel and Leonard. The next moment, the offense and defense were exchanged. The fallen angel's attack had no effect on the roaring flame demon sword, but it didn't mean that the roaring flame demon sword would stand there and take a beating. In the ripples of the shimmer, the light wings behind the roaring flame demon sword flapped and rushed out 100 meters, instantly landing in front of the fallen angel. Boom! There was a loud noise. It was the roaring flame demon sword's palm blade that slashed on the fallen angel's lambda drive system force field. Is it just such a simple move? Leonard stared at the roaring flame demon sword in front of him with hatred in his eyes. The fallen angel waved his right hand and slammed it on the roaring flame demon sword's palm blade, blasting it away. A flaw appeared at this moment. The roaring flame demon sword's door was wide open as the palm blade was blasted away. As long as Leonard decisively seized this opportunity, he would definitely be able to pierce through the roaring flame demon sword and kill Rei Minkai, who was sitting inside. Without hesitation, the moment the roaring flame demon sword's hands were still retreating, the fallen angel's hands had already crossed together. He pulled the bow to the fullest. Then he released. The invisible arrow shot out with a loud bang, attacking the roaring flame demon sword's chest at an extremely close distance. The brilliance of the lambda drive power was incomparably bright and deadly at this moment. Under this brilliance, the fallen angel still maintained the posture of shooting the arrow, while the roaring flame demon sword was still in the posture of having its door wide open. But the only difference was that a small sun slowly rose between the two, becoming brighter and brighter. Woo 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 woo. The ear-piercing alarm kept ringing. The screen in front of him first lit up with the words that emergency cooling measures had been activated, and then the alarm that it was about to overheat popped up. As long as the situation in front of him continued, the fallen angel's lambda drive system would inevitably be paralyzed. This, Leonard was resentful in his heart, but there was nothing he could do. Boom! The terrifying energy produced by the confrontation of the lambda drive system exploded with a loud bang. The roaring flame demon sword and the fallen angel flew backward one after another. However, the distance between the two flying backward was different. Under the drive of the light wing system, the roaring flame demon sword only retreated a little less than 10 meters before stabilizing its body. However, the fallen angel streaked across the sky like a meteor. The moment before she almost fell into the palace, she barely used the power of the lambda drive system to stabilize her body. Leonard, do you only have these tricks? In midair, the roaring flame demon sword looked down at the fallen angel. The roaring flame demon sword's evolution continued every day, but the fallen angel couldn't see any changes. Even though there was a set of strange-looking devices on the shoulders of the fallen angel, they couldn't see any effect. Chapter 482. The raging flame demon sword was high above, looking down at the fallen angel standing on top of the palace. Raymond Kai's calm words made Reynolds grit his teeth fiercely. The fallen angel bent his legs and suddenly turned into a sharp arrow, rushing toward the raging flame demon sword in the sky. At the same time, the fallen angel raised his left wrist, and the wrist cannon he was equipped with repeatedly roared angrily at the raging flame demon sword. However, it was still blocked by the force field of the raging flame demon sword's lambda drive system. Reynolds was not surprised. When two bodies with lambda drive systems fought, this was just a sparse and ordinary thing. His real purpose was not to rely on the wrist cannon to knock down the raging flame demon sword, but to use the cover of the wrist cannon to quickly close the distance between him and the raging flame demon sword, and then slash out fiercely with his hand. Under the brilliance of the lambda drive system, the fallen angel's hand that was wrapped in a layer of flowing brilliance rushed in front of the raging flame demon sword and fiercely slashed on the lambda drive system force field protecting the raging flame demon sword. Buzz! The moment the hand blade touched the force field, ripples constantly appeared on the force field, and the speed of the ripples became faster and faster. When the ripples reached a certain threshold, the fallen angel's hand blade was like a sharp knife hot enough to melt butter, tearing apart the lambda drive system force field of the raging flame demon sword and going straight for the head of the raging flame demon sword. However, the fallen angel's hand blade did not touch the head of the raging flame demon sword. The moment it was about to touch the head of the raging flame demon sword, it was caught by the right hand of the raging flame demon sword. The moment the raging flame demon sword caught the fallen angel's handblade, its unique huge force actually made small but dazzling cracks on the armor of the fallen angel's arm. As the dazzling cracks spread, the fallen angel's hand would not be able to escape the fate of being directly broken by the raging flame demon sword. There was no choice. Reynolds knew that this attack was undoubtedly a failure. If he did not retreat decisively, the fallen angel's arm would definitely be lost. However, this was exactly what Reynolds wanted. Humph! Do you think the fallen angel and I will lose to you again? Night! Die! Frenzied killing intent erupted from Reynolds' eyes at this moment. His gaze was so cold that it could freeze everything as he stared at the raging flame's devil sword. Gravity device activate. Amidst the cold voice, the strange device on the fallen angel's shoulders suddenly moved, and it had already completed its deployment in a matter of seconds. Buzz! A burst of terrifying pressure. From a void, it suddenly pressed down on the body of the fiery demon sword. Caught off guard, the raging flame demon sword smashed into the ground like a meteor under the pressure of this pressure. Boom! Under the huge pressure, the raging flame demon sword, flame demon sword, sword, flame, and flame demon sword, of the demon sword, demon sword. The flame demon sword, flame demon red, 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 red. S. Red flame demon sword, S. S of his sword demon, S. Of sword flame, sword, 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 demon sword. The strange devices on the fallen angel's shoulders were flowing with faint red radiance. Under the flowing radiance, it was the power that created the enormous pressure that caused the raging flame demon sword to fall from the sky and firmly press it against the ground. Triple gravity. Amidst the billowing dust, there was no sound. There was only the gradually dissipating dust and the translucent ball that distorted the light. In the distorted light, the appearance of the raging flame demon sword wasn't very clear. However, Leonard could sense the struggle of the raging flame demon sword from the blurry shadow. Leonard couldn't help but feel a sense of joy when he saw that he had to go all out, but was unable to escape. "Stop, Leonard!" At this moment, a familiar voice sounded in the public channel. This voice? Teresa? How is that possible? As soon as he heard this voice, Leonard was in disbelief at first, but then he came to a realization. "Teresa Testarossa, so you've also left your hometown?" Reynolds looked up and stared at the battleship at the edge of the city. Now he understood why the battleship gave him an inexplicable sense of familiarity when he first saw it. It turned out that his sister, Teresa, was on it. "Yes, I boarded this ship because I wanted you to go back." Teresa looked at the fallen angel on the screen and directly said her thoughts. Teresa saw the battle between the raging flame demon sword and the fallen angel. However, she couldn't find a suitable opportunity until the raging flame demon sword was pressed against the ground by the mysterious device on the fallen angel. "Let me go back." Leonard was taken aback and then laughed loudly. "Let me go back? Why do you want me to go back to that world? There's nothing in that world that's worth my nostalgia." "Teresa, you're too naive." Leonard sneered. "That's the world where you were born. It's the place where our parents are sleeping. Why don't you have any nostalgia for your hometown?" "Leonard, the amalgam has been modified. Our hometown won't have any more wars." Teresa loudly refuted Leonard's words. "Oof. Parents? Teresa, you're too naive." Leonard sighed inwardly. Then a cold glint appeared in his eyes. "The one who brought you to that ship should be this knight, right? Then, in return, I'll give him death." Leonard unscrupulously released his killing intent. Moreover, under the influence of this killing intent, Leonard did not hesitate to push the power of the strange device on the fallen angel's shoulders to the maximum. "I, Max, demand, hate, you, this, seed, person, so go die." A huge pressure once again descended from the void. This time, the level of this huge pressure far exceeded the previous level. In an instant, the crater created by the raging flame demon sword expanded by several times. However, this was unable to completely suppress the energy caused by the huge pressure within the crater. As the terrifying energy wreaked havoc everywhere, cracks wantonly tore the surrounding ground apart, burying the people who couldn't escape in time in the expanding cracks. Leonard believed that under this attack that was close to 10 times the gravity, even the raging flame demon sword would not be able to escape. "Not good. The raging flame demon sword's signal has been lost. We've lost contact with the night captain." While exclamations sounded on the bridge, Euphemia, who had maintained her silence and the posture of a ruler, could not help but stand up from her seat. She looked worriedly at the translucent ball of light that swallowed the raging flame demon sword. "Avalon, target, fallen angel, attack with all your might." Teresa bit her lip and stopped pinching the ends of her hair. Instead, she waved her hair forward forcefully. Under her command, except for the most powerful cannon, the Excalibur, the rest of the missile slots and cannons of Avalon locked onto the fallen angel. The moment Avalon's fire control radar's lock-on signal was activated, an ear-piercing alarm sounded on the fallen angel's cockpit. However, Leonard did not care that he had been locked onto by Avalon. "Teresa, although little girls can be willful, don't go too far." In Leonard's seemingly indulgent voice, the fallen angel suddenly raised her left hand in the direction of Avalon. In an instant, Avalon's flying posture sank, and the entire ship's alarm system sounded. "Report the situation. Your Majesty, please sit tight." After Teresa gave a quick order, she turned around to remind Euphemia. "No, Captain Teresa, tell Avalon to stop locking onto that airframe. This is just an alarm." Euphemia waved her hand, indicating that there was no need to worry, and said while looking at the fallen angel on the screen, "What? If Avalon stops, I'm afraid that Captain Knight will." Teresa was shocked and seemed to be unable to understand Euphemia's decision. "No, Captain Teresa, stop the lock-on. Also, you have to believe in Kay. These attacks are nothing to Kay." Euphemia's determined expression made Teresa surprised and suspicious, but she still did as she was told. Avalon's lock-on stopped. Leonard did not need to be distracted to deal with Teresa. As long as he got rid of the body that was an eyesore below, as well as the person sitting inside, no matter how much trouble Teresa gave him, he could easily solve it and give Teresa a little punishment. "Time's up. Here, go to hell." The strange device on the fallen angel's shoulders exerted force again, and an even greater pressure descended on the deep pit below, on the head of the raging flame demon sword that had been bitterly suppressed. Z. Suddenly, a burst of signal noise appeared on the communication channel. Moreover, the raging flame demon sword that had been crushed into a piece of iron under the stronger gravity was still there, still remaining in the translucent ball of light. How is this possible? Under Leonard's incredulous gaze, Ray Minkai's voice finally sounded on the communication channel. "Don't be too proud, Leonard. No, impossible. No creature can survive under 10 times the gravity. Yes, 10 times the gravity. This really surprised me. Leonard, is this the power you obtained after escaping with Miss Q? This is really interesting." Ray Minkai's voice gradually became clearer, and the noise in the signal also disappeared further. "That's right. No creature can escape from the shackles of gravity. But souls can." Just as Ray Minkai's voice fell, within the translucent ball of light that enveloped the raging flame demon sword, a faint light suddenly rose, and it grew at an unimaginable speed, until it exploded with a power that was enough to tear the translucent ball of light apart. Boom! A huge wind pressure suddenly formed, and with the raging flame demon sword as the center, it crazily swept everything around it. No matter if it was the wreckage or the gravel, everything rushed towards the dome in this storm. Under this terrifying scene, the raging flame demon sword once again spread out its wings of light and appeared in front of the fallen angel. What shocked Leonard was that the gravity attack just now did not leave a single mark on the raging flame demon sword's body, and even the broken arm that was held in the raging flame demon sword's hand did not suffer any damage. No, impossible. That is 10 times the gravity. How could it be fine? Leonard could not believe that the operation that he had put in so much effort for would actually end up in such a situation. Impossible? Probably. It's just that I have a rather capable cat at home. Ray Minkai's seemingly casual words made Leonard confused. At the same time, he also felt a sense of humiliation. He simply could not imagine that at this moment, in the raging flame demon sword's cockpit, the white cat that was lying down next to Ray Minkai's feet and taking a nap was the culprit that allowed the raging flame demon sword to survive under 10 times the gravity. Don't tease me here." Leonard roared angrily, and the strange device on the fallen angel's shoulder once again exerted force, and once again aimed at the raging flame demon sword. However, this time, Ray Minkai made the first move to gain the initiative. The auxiliary mechanical arm behind the raging flame demon sword's right shoulder turned, and the sword from the Lake's beam rifle that was held by it had already locked onto the strange device on the fallen angel's shoulder. Wong. The particle beam of the sword from the Lake's beam rifle lit up first, and the moment the fallen angel's strange device exerted force, it pierced through it. Z-boom! The particle beam wreaked havoc, and the energy balance of the strange device was completely destroyed. The energy that had lost its restraints not only blew up the strange device, it also destroyed the fallen angel's head on the spot. The violent explosion not only caused the fallen angel to lose the ability to monitor the outside world, but also caused the power furnace that was already at its limit to enter a state of suspension. There were no accidents and no lucky things that happened. In the violent explosion, Leonard lost control of the fallen angel and could only sit powerlessly inside the fallen angel and fell into the Visser Palace amidst the billowing smoke. Looking at the roof that was smashed open by the fallen angel, Ray Minkai let out a sigh of relief. The gravity attack just now had indeed surprised Ray Minkai. If it wasn't for State White Cat Zero's quick reaction, it would have immediately fused with the Raging Flame Demon Sword, increasing the strength of the Raging Flame Demon Sword by several levels. Otherwise, there would have been a large piece of metal called the Raging Flame Demon Sword in the deep pit below. Kai, are you okay? Seeing that the battle had ended, Euphemia's communication came through. I'm fine. Thanks to State Zero. Ray Minkai nodded and gave a smile that made Euphemia feel at ease. 30 kilograms. The White Cat State Zero, who was dozing off, suddenly interrupted. Good. After we go back, the stock in warehouse number 1 is all yours. To the White Cat State Zero's surprise, Euphemia was very forthright this time. As soon as she opened her mouth, she directly allocated the largest private warehouse used by the Britannia royal family to store cherry stones. Surprised, not only did the White Cat State Zero's eyes widen, even its tail that was swaying from time to time stopped in shock. Your Majesty, you are spoiling State Zero too much. It's okay. This is what State Zero deserves. Speaking of which, Princess Ethelum should be arriving at the palace soon. Euphemia did not care about the loss of the Cherry Stone warehouse. What she cared about was Ray Minkai. In order to not let Ray Minkai be entangled in this issue, Euphemia decisively used her trump card, Ethelum. Understood. Raging Flame Demon Sword. Now begin to converge with Princess Ethelum. Chapter 483. The steel giants with violet badges on their shoulders continued to fire at the buildings on both sides of the road as they pushed forward. This was not because there were enemies lurking in the buildings on both sides of the road, but because the nearby roads had been occupied by the turbulent flow of people. In order to prevent the road to the palace from being occupied by the turbulent flow of people, Gemini, who had no feelings for Weiss, decisively adopted this method of violent demolition. Of course, these buildings were not demolished by Gemini for no reason, but in a sense, they would also block the flow of people. In the cockpit of the Lionheart Knight, Ethelum looked worriedly at the buildings on both sides of the road that were being destroyed by Gemini's Lionheart Knight. She knew that this was something that could not be helped. If Gemini's Lionheart Knight was stopped by Weiss's people who were controlled by the song, it would be a bloody massacre in front of Ethelum. From the first time she saw Gemini, her intuition had already told her that the Gemini in front of her was not a kind person, but looked very delicate, but was actually a pair of twin killers who killed without blinking. Your Highness, Sir is coming to join us. Please sit tight. Xia Yufeng's voice didn't fluctuate at all, but made Ethelum heave a sigh of relief. Ray Minkai had rushed over. At the same time, it also proved that there should be good progress in the palace. In the sky above the city, the Raging Flame Demon Sword overlooked the city below. Even if the Raging Flame Demon Sword and the Fallen Angel had caused a great commotion, and even caused the palace square to become a scene of devastation and destruction, the huge deep pit was more like a wound that could not be healed, and it was a deep stab to the eyes that saw this scene. This is probably the population of this city. TSK. The White Cat State Zero lowered its head, looked at the display screen under the driver's seat, and snorted. Yes, there should be no obstruction in the factory area. Under the temptation of the song, the people around King's City continued to gather in this area. Even if Ray Minkai and Avalon tried to stop the flow of people, they could not stop the population of less than 1 million people. In front of them, the buildings collapsed under the artillery fire. The smoke and dust that rose into the air was extremely conspicuous in this city that was engulfed in the flames of war. The wings of light streaked across the sky above the city and slowly landed in front of the Gemini, Lionheart Knight. Xia Yufeng, Xia Yulan, and Princess Isolum, are you all right? Lei Mingkai's voice was transmitted to the ears of Gemini and Aziram through the communication channel as soon as the sword arrived. Yes, my lord. Other than encountering some obstructions from the controlled citizens along the way, overall, everything went smoothly. Very good. Follow me. This city no longer has the power to hinder the flight of the Lionheart Knight. Following Rei Mingkai's announcement, 3 pairs of light wings unfurled and 3 figures soared into the sky. When the Lionheart Knight flew into the sky above the city, Ethelum saw the devastation in the palace square, as well as the extremely eye-catching deep pit. Is that the trace left behind by the previous battle? The battle between the fiery demon sword and the fallen angel was mostly in midair, so most of the city could see it clearly. The only difference was that other than Avalon, the other people who had entered the city were unaware of the devastation in the palace square. Yes, I'm sorry. The enemy is very strong. I can only do my best. No, because it's a battle, there's no other way. It's inevitable. Ethelum clenched her hands tightly in front of her chest, and in front of her eyes was the deep pit that was gradually dyed red by the flowing red. No need to explain. No need to confess. Ethelum already knew how fierce the battle was just now. It was so fierce that even the people coming from all directions could only become the victims of the battle, becoming part of the dazzling red that gradually gathered in the deep pit. Captain Knight, we must end this battle as soon as possible. Is that okay? Ethelum bit her lip, looked up at the screen in front of her, and stared at Rei Mingkai's profile picture. As you wish. Your Highness, we're here for this. Rei Mingkai responded to Ethelum's request very simply. At this moment, the gate of the palace was in front of them. Next, Rei Mingkai would cover Ethelum to enter the palace, seize control of the city, and end the battle. The small debris slowly slid down the broken wall in the vibration and fell toward the bottom of the huge hole until it hit the steel giant lying quietly at the bottom, illuminated only by a few rays of light. Dang! The dull sound reverberated in the hollow, disrupting the sound of water flowing from the top to the bottom. Tap, tap! The sound of high heels stepping in the puddle suddenly sounded, and it was getting closer and closer, until a fiery red woman walked out of the darkness and stood beside the steel giant lying at the bottom of the hole. It's really miserable. Leonard, why didn't you listen to my advice? Your fallen angel hasn't adapted to that weapon yet. The pupils of the fiery red woman reflected the miserable appearance of the steel giant. The tattered shoulders, the brain that no longer existed, and the scars all over the body were telling the woman a fact. This body had reached the end of its fate. I was too impatient. The dilapidated cockpit door opened with a squeak. Leonard appeared in front of the fiery red woman with a dusty face. His beautiful silver hair became messy, and his pure hair color was stained with some oil, which made him look slightly dirty. In addition, his left forehead seemed to have hit something. A shocking bloodstain ran all the way down his left forehead, occupying most of Leonard's face. I think you've had enough of the price of being impatient. Leonard, if you calm down, come with me. This body, just leave it here. The fiery red woman glanced at Leonard, who was in a sorry state but still looked calm. She nodded slowly. Time. Leonard didn't agree to the fiery red woman's request, but looked at the top of the hole, where the dome was gradually occupied by smoke. Someone has already bought time for us. The fiery red woman smiled softly, then turned and left. She disappeared into the darkness again, not caring whether Leonard would follow or not. Leonard shook his head when he saw the handsome figure. He struggled to get out of the fallen angel that could no longer be activated. Then, standing next to the fallen angel, Leonard reached out and touched his forehead that didn't feel much pain anymore. After glancing at the bloodstain on his hand, he looked up at the hole that the fallen angel smashed into. Night. See you later. Suddenly, Rei Mingkai, who felt something, looked at the palace with some doubts. Did you find something? Kai. Standing up and preparing to enter the palace, the white cat State Zero looked back at Ray Minkai in confusion. No, it's just that something feels wrong. Ray Minkai shook his head and then stopped the roaring flame demon sword in front of the palace gate. Al, execute alert mode. Cooperate with Gemini to execute the alert mission. Are you confident? Ray Minkai asked AL as he unfastened his seatbelt. This was the first time AL carried out an autonomous mission after joining Ray Minkai. Although Ray Minkai had a certain degree of confidence in AL's AI, he decided to let AL cooperate with Gemini to be on the safe side. Of course. Knight, please do not worry about the mission. AL's answer was affirmative. Okay, I'm counting on you. As the cockpit opened, the white cat State Zero also jumped onto Ray Minkai's shoulder, walked down from the roaring flame demon sword, and came in front of Xia Yufeng, who sent Aethylam to the palace gate. Knight, suddenly, without waiting for Aethylam and Ray Minkai to say a word, a violent roar sounded from the palace behind them without warning. And, in the roar, a purple-red armored cavalry appeared like a whirlwind and fell heavily into the deep pit that was already filled with blood. Under the impact, the sky full of blood soared into the sky and then poured down towards the surroundings. Be careful! Ray Minkai reached out and pulled Aethylam into his arms to protect her. At the same time, the white cat State Zero lying on Ray Minkai's shoulder flashed and opened up a layer of shield to protect Ray Minkai and Aethylam, blocking the pouring blood outside. Walala! In a sky full of blood rain, Gemini's reaction was very vigilant. Xia Yulan first piloted her body, raised her gun in front of the enemy, and bought a little time for her sister Xia Yufeng to return to the body. Under her cover, Xia Yufeng, who successfully returned to the body, sent a signal and said on the communication channel, Knight, leave it to us. Please proceed according to the plan. I know. AL, cooperate with Xia Yufeng and Xia Yulan to attack. Ray Minkai responded and also issued another order to AL. Understood. Knight, now begin the combat mission. Knight, please act according to the original plan as soon as possible. Under AL's control, the roaring flame demon sword rushed to the front of the Lionheart Knight piloted by Gemini and quickly opened a radiation light shield to provide cover for Gemini's next battle. Under the radiation light shield of the roaring flame demon sword, the Lionheart Knight was ready to attack in the blink of an eye. Princess Aethylam, are you okay? No, I'm fine. Knight. Aethylam, who was once again protected by Ray Minkai, shook her head slightly. She raised her head subconsciously, looked over Ray Minkai's shoulder, and looked into the dazzling depths. Dioscuri, how come? In the blood rain that gradually stopped, it was the Dioscuri that was killed by Ray Minkai not long ago. No, that's not the Dioscuri on the moon base. It's the Dioscuri made on Mars. Ray Minkai shook his head and gave a brief summary of the information Fianna had sent back. This might be a well-prepared plan. Perhaps on this Crimson Planet, some people would come up with such a plan. A plan to replenish their combat power in a short time if the orbital knight on the moon base failed and retreated to Mars. Of course, this was not a plan that Weiser would envision. In the face of the armored cavalry equipped with the ALDNOH reactor, the Earth Alliance Army's resistance was powerless. Therefore, the person who came up with this plan must be someone else. Of course, this was no longer important. Let's move quickly. Leave this to them. Time was of the essence. Ray Minkai pulled Aethylam up and rushed directly into the palace gate. In the shadow of the palace gate, the white cat State Zero leaped from Ray Minkai's shoulder and once again turned into the wild lion that Aethylam was very familiar with. Come on up, Kai, Princess Aethylam. However, what Ray Minkai and Aethylam did not expect was that the moment Aethylam looked up at the Martian version of Dioscuri from Ray Minkai's arms, her delicate face was clearly seen by the person sitting in the cockpit of Dioscuri. In an instant, the delicate and familiar face in front of him made the pilot, whose face was covered by a black and red mask, hold his head and howl in pain. Ah, no, that's Princess Athylum. I, I can't. Under the stimulation brought by the familiar face, endless pain emerged from the depths of the pilot's mind, wantonly attacking the pilot's nerves, repeatedly impacting the pilot's memory over and over again. That delicate face, that familiar figure, there was also that soft golden hair that he missed. All of this was telling him a fact. He was attacking the person he loved deeply. No. The painful howl echoed in the cockpit for a long time. At the same time, the painful howl was transmitted along the radio waves to a certain underground space located in the deepest part of the palace. Not good. Slane's consciousness is beginning to recover. Remulina, who was sitting in a wheelchair, looked at the rapidly fluctuating curve on the screen in front of her and could not help but exclaim, "Is it stimulated? Your Royal Highness, it seems that the fetters in your knight's heart are deeper than we thought." Miss Q, who brought Reynold back, glanced at the rapidly fluctuating curve and shook her head slightly. "Does that mean that sister is already here?" Remulina was very smart and immediately thought of the reason why her knight became like this. "I'm afraid that's the case. That knight is already here. I believe that he will soon find this place." "Miss Q, can the plan start?" Reynold glanced at Remulina and asked Miss Q. "It's already done, but still needs some time. I hope that Princess Remulina's knight can buy us some time, right?" Miss Q's gaze fell on the red button next to Remulina's hand. What she meant was that she wanted Remulina to press this button. She wanted to buy more time for Slane, who had already become the Princess Knight. Chapter 484. The red button was like a sharp thorn that pierced deeply into Remulina's eyes. She knew that as long as this red button was pressed, Slane Troy would truly become her knight. However, Slane Troy would only become Remulina's puppet, who only had eyes for Athylum. If she pressed it, Slane would not be stimulated by the Athylum in front of him and would wholeheartedly fight for the Athylum in his heart. If she didn't press it, Slane would only be stimulated back and forth between the false environment and reality. Remulina moved her lips, but she didn't say what was in her heart. The knight she wanted was not a puppet. Instead, she wanted to drive away the Athylum in Slane's heart and replace her. "Princess Remulina, I'll leave everything to you." Miss Q saw the hesitation in Remulina's heart at a glance, but to Leonard's surprise, she didn't force Remulina. Remulina lowered her head and didn't respond. Leonard glanced at Miss Q. He looked like he wanted to say something, but he didn't say what was in his heart. Giving time to a hesitant girl, in Leonard's opinion, was undoubtedly the most foolish decision. "It's almost time. Follow me, Leonard." Miss Q didn't care what Leonard was thinking. She just signaled Leonard to follow her footsteps and left Remulina in the same place to let her think carefully. The impact of the mysterious song not only caused the city's roads to be crowded with people, but it also caused the palace that was usually heavily guarded to become an unguarded building. The 3-meter-tall steel lion rampaged around the palace unscrupulously. The huge commotion caused by the steel lion running in the palace's passageway didn't wake up the guards who were standing in the same place in a daze. "This palace must be dreaming," a dull voice rumbled from the wild lion's body. "It's affected by the song. How can the princess's song reach such a level? When I listened to the princess's song before, it didn't happen at all." Athylum grabbed the handle on the driver's seat with both hands. Her face was extremely puzzled. His heart was filled with both joy and doubt. Fortunately, the soldiers were all affected by the song and fell into a state of sluggishness. What puzzled her was that she had heard this song before, but she didn't feel anything about it except that it was pleasant. Perhaps it wasn't the right time to make a move. "Princess Athylum." Athylum nodded silently. Layman Kai's words made sense. However, she still needed to personally witness the truth. "In front, turn right and go straight. Over there is the room of the first emperor of the Weiss Empire, my grandfather, Regalia Weislabas." Roar! The target was in sight. The lion's speed increased by another 30%. In less than a minute, the huge steel lion had already arrived in front of a door. "Go in." Looking at the familiar door in front of her, Ethylam didn't expect to return to this room under such circumstances and meet her grandfather, who she hadn't seen for nearly a year. Amidst the faint light, the 3-meter-tall wild lion gradually shrank until it was a head taller than Lei Mingkai. Only then did it stop. "Let me do it." State Zero walked in front of the door, raised his claws, and slammed the door. Bang! With a loud noise, the door in front of Lei Mingkai and Ethylam collapsed. "State Zero, do you have to use so much strength?" Lei Mingkai's eyelids twitched. He didn't expect State Zero to use such a violent method to open the door. Or rather, from the beginning, the decision to let State Zero open the door was undoubtedly Lei Mingkai's biggest failure. "No, it doesn't matter. Knight Captain, let's go." Surprisingly, Ethylam did not pursue State Zero's reckless act of knocking down the door. Instead, she stepped on the fallen door and walked into the room that occupied the most important memory of Ethylam's life since she could remember things. State Zero's big head shook. In the sound of metal friction, it looked innocently at Lei Mingkai, as if begging for mercy. In this regard, Lei Mingkai sighed helplessly and followed Ethylam. The light in the room wasn't dim. Instead, it was carefully arranged so that the light in the room was always at the right level. It didn't make people feel dazzled or dim. At the same time, when they stepped into the room, Lei Mingkai saw a bed and a graceful figure. Bed. It was a hospital bed. The first Emperor of Vice, Regalia Vice Labas, was lying on it. Her face was covered by an oxygen mask. The 4-drip bottle hanging by the bed and the line that stretched out from under the quilt connected to the vital signs machine beside it undoubtedly told Ethylam and Lei Mingkai a fact. The first Emperor in front of them probably didn't have much time left. The graceful figure by the bed, Ethylam stared at her for a long time until she called out a name. Princess Victoria. It turned out that this graceful figure was the princess who had the mysterious singing voice. Hearing Ethylam's call, the graceful figure, the woman who was called Princess Victoria, slowly turned around and fully displayed her beauty in front of Lei Mingkai and Ethylam. Oh, something unexpected happened at this moment. When Lei Mingkai saw Princess Victoria's face, a piercing pain suddenly swept from the depths of his heart. It swept across Lei Mingkai's mind like a shocking tide. Sometimes it was a beautiful woman under the sky full of petals. Sometimes it was a vast and boundless grassland. Sometimes it was a charming lake under the moonlight. Sometimes it was the castle that was spread by the flames of war. From time to time, it would be the horrifying scene of the broken mechanical beast corpses that had lost all signs of life. They were like small mountains that occupied large areas of land. This was the memory of the world that Lei Mingkai had forgotten for a long time. This was the memory frenzy triggered by the face of the woman named Victoria. In this sudden memory frenzy, Lei Mingkai was helpless and could only watch helplessly as he drifted along in this memory frenzy. Captain Knight. Almost at the same time, Ethylam, who discovered Lei Mingkai's abnormality, turned around and wanted to help Lei Mingkai, but suddenly a gust of wind swept past her. This, Lord Zero. The one who caused the gust of wind was not someone else. It was State Zero who revealed a ferocious look, and his golden pupils were overflowing with murderous intent. "Who the hell are you?" Roar. The huge steel lion rushed towards the hospital bed like a cannonball. But in front of State Zero's sharp claws, a light blue force field suddenly rose and blocked State Zero, who rushed to the hospital bed. Zero. State Zero. Stop. Just as State Zero did not give up and was about to launch a more violent attack, Lei Mingkai's painful voice sounded. "Kai, that is not her. She is already dead." With Ethylam's help, the pale Lei Mingkai gritted his teeth and endured the sudden pain, and looked at Princess Victoria's face again. "You are not her." The woman named Victoria did not respond to Lei Mingkai's question verbally. She just shook her head, then stretched out her finger and pointed at Ethylam. Then, under the former's gaze, she pointed at the first Emperor, who was lying on a hospital bed and waiting for the last moment, and disappeared in a stream of light. Holographic projection. State Zero growled and pounced forward, only to find that not only did Victoria disappear, but even the light blue force field that blocked State Zero's attack had disappeared. State Zero, who lost all obstacles, fell on the side of the hospital bed blankly and did not know what to do for a moment. Your Highness, thank you. You go. I'm fine. A trace of blood gradually returned to his pale face. The pain that swept through his mind also gradually subsided as Victoria, the familiar face, left. Ray Minkai, who regained his balance, signaled Ethylum not to care about her and let her do her own thing. Ethylum looked at Ray Minkai worriedly, then walked to the hospital bed and looked down at the first Emperor who was lying on the bed. As if he noticed someone standing beside the bed, the first Emperor who was dying slowly opened his eyes and looked at the person beside the bed. In his turbid eyes was Ethylum's figure. Ethylum, Ethylum, my granddaughter, you are here. The old man's intermittent call made Ethylum feel an indescribable emotion in her heart. Yes, Your Majesty, grandfather, I am here to see you. There are no outsiders here. Ethylum's voice was choked, and she subconsciously reached out to hold the first Emperor's skinny right hand. The white mist on the oxygen mask flickered. The first Emperor moved his eyes with difficulty and carefully looked at Ethylum. AI, Esilam, you can stand up again. That's great. Yes, Your Majesty. I am fine. Ethylum gently put the first Emperor's right hand on her cheek and looked at the first Emperor. Well, that's great. Earth. Take back. Come. Suddenly, the first Emperor's breathing became hurried, and the life maintenance device beside him began to sound frantically with alarms. Your Majesty, grandfather, please hold on. I will go call for help. Ethylum just wanted to turn around and call for help, but she was pulled back by a huge force. She looked back. It was the dying old man, the first Emperor's right hand. The dying old man stared at Ethylum. His pale and bloodless face was even more terrifying. F. As the last syllable of the word revenge rang out, the vitality of the first Emperor suddenly disappeared from his struggling body without a trace. Only his last wish and the red and swollen wound on Ethylum's hand remained in this world. Emperor Weiss is gone. Ethel Lamb stood quietly beside the bed until Lei Minkai, who had recovered, came forward to check on her. Only then did she regain her senses. Thank you, Knight Captain. Ray Minkai shook his head and looked at Ethylum's calm face, but deep inside, there was a lonely storm spreading. He sighed slightly. Your Highness Princess, Ethylum. My condolences. Yes, I will. Now, there are still other things waiting for us. Ethylum tried to keep herself calm, but Ray Minkai could see that the lonely storm in her heart was getting stronger and stronger. There was no other reason. Ray Minkai was not an ordinary person. He was a man who had been with the Princess of the Empire for a long time. Based on this, Ray Minkai knew very well the choices that the princess was facing, especially in such a critical crisis. All the choices were crucial for the princess. Ray Minkai did not say anything. He just took out a white square handkerchief and gently covered the first Emperor's face with it. He then placed the handkerchief in front of the Emperor's chest and looked up at Ethylum. Your Highness Princess Ethylum. Although it's abrupt, we still have things to deal with now. Ethylum looked at the white square handkerchief on the first Emperor's face, and then looked at the remains that Ray Minkai had arranged. She nodded slowly. Let's go. Knight Captain. We must deal with the rest of the things as soon as possible. Deep in the palace, Remurina looked at the red button in her hand with a gloomy expression. Her heart was constantly wavering between pressing it or not. However, these wavering would eventually come to an end. A light flashed, and a graceful figure quietly appeared beside Remurina. It was Princess Victoria. She gently looked at the wavering Remurina, then stretched out her finger and gently tapped on Remurina's chest. She then disappeared in the light again. Princess Victoria, when Remurina saw the woman who had always been with the first emperor, she immediately realized that something was wrong. The first emperor had probably already passed away. At this moment, Remurina lost the most important weight to keep Vess in check. After losing the most important weight of the first emperor, as long as Athylam finished dealing with the matters here and announced her identity publicly, then Remurina, the hidden princess who pretended to be Athylam, would inevitably face a reckoning. What to do? Remurina had no choice. In the face of the impending fate, the wavering choice in her heart finally fell on a red button in her hand. Click! There was a soft sound. Remurina's guardian knight was born, even though he was just a puppet that had been bewitched by an illusion. Chapter 485. Dioscuri was more than 20 meters away from Gouda, and Gemini felt tremendous pressure just by standing there. However, the pressure was almost static. When AL piloted the fiery sword and activated the radiation shield, the Geminis were surprised to find that Dioscuri, who had jumped out of the palace and landed heavily in the deep pit, was still inside, completely ignoring the Geminis and the others. It was as if Dioscuri was just a stranger who happened to pass by. Yufeng, what should we do? Xia Yulan's voice came from the Lionheart Knight, who was standing behind the flame demon sword. Xia Yufeng did not immediately respond to her sister's question. After pressing a few keys on the small keyboard on the right, she looked at the information displayed on the small screen at the bottom of the corner of her eyes. Yulan, flank him. Leave the front to the flame demon sword. Xia Yufeng quickly made a decision. However, this decision made the flame demon sword piloted by AL become a target to attract the enemy's attention. In this regard, AL had no opinion. The radiation shield suddenly flickered. At the same time, the Lionheart Knight piloted by Gemini rushed out from behind a radiation shield in the blink of an eye and launched an attack on Dioscuri for both sides. However, Gemini's Lionheart Knight had just rushed halfway when Dioscuri, who was originally unresponsive, suddenly moved. The propulsion engine behind him suddenly burst into flames. However, this was not a reaction to the attack launched by Gemini's Lionheart Knight. Instead, under Gemini's surprised eyes, he rushed out and turned around to rush towards the palace. His speed was so fast that even the flame demon sword, which had the fastest reaction, could not stop him from rushing towards the palace. The Lionheart Knight's machine gun gradually stopped firing, and AL's program made a decision in the blink of an eye. Xia Yufeng, Xia Yulan, the target has left the palace square. You can carry out the next step of the mission. I will stay here and wait for the return of the night. Dioscuri's retreat, without a fight, made the Gemini look at each other. But they also readily accepted the arrangement. The battle in the palace no longer required the Gemini to fight. The rest was left to Rei Minkai. Slain, slain. Gentle calls kept ringing in the youth's ears. That gentle voice, as always, tugged at Serene's young, yet tormented heart. Come to me quickly. Slain. That's right. It was the call of the most important person in Serene's life. In order to answer her call, no matter where he was, Serene would immediately go and answer her call. For that, Serene would eliminate all obstacles before him, even if the person standing in front of him was her. Serene, the most important person in his life. The steel lion let out a low roar, but the man and woman on its back looked ahead warily. The girl in the wheelchair and the black-red body that suddenly broke through the ground and landed on the girl's back amidst the scattered debris and dust. It was a girl with a face identical to Ethelum's. What a surprise. Imperial sister, I didn't expect to meet you under such circumstances. The hermit princess in the wheelchair controlled the wheelchair to move back while gently smiling. Her face was identical to Ethelum's, causing Ethelum to frown involuntarily. Although she had seen the relevant information before, after seeing the hermit princess impersonating her with her own eyes, Ethelum suddenly lost the anger to reprimand her sister. Ethelum's silence surprised the hermit princess, but since Ethelum was already in front of her, it meant that there was no turning back. Next, It was time to decide her own fate. The retreating wheelchair slowly came to a stop at the foot of the black and red body that had broken through the ground and landed here. The hermit princess raised her hand and touched the foot of the body named Dioscuri, feeling the coldness on it. She looked at the silent Aethylam, and then at lay Minkai behind Aethylam. What? You're not talking? My imperial sister. I didn't expect you to have found a new knight in such a short time. It's no wonder you were able to destroy Count Zasbrum's plan in such a short time and take down the moon base. Congratulations. A mocking smile appeared on the hermit princess's face. You said, right? My knight, Serene Troyat. Serene. The person sitting in Dioscuri is Serene. As soon as Serene's name was mentioned, Aethylam looked at Dioscuri in shock. At the same time, Rayminkai's eyes flashed with a hint of understanding. If the person sitting in Dioscuri was really Serene Troyat, it could explain the gap in strength between Dioscuri and the hermit princess during the attack on the moon base. Why? Why did you involve Serene in this battle? Answer me. You hid your true face and pretended to be my impudent. Aethylam's performance finally began to match the hermit princess's imagination. Therefore, in order to respond to Aethylam, the hermit princess laughed a few times. Impudent? Ha! That's true. After the self-deprecating laughter, the hermit princess raised her eyes and looked directly into Aethylam's eyes. In the name of the person who inherits the wiser bloodline. After the order was softly spoken, the face that was identical to Aethylam's instantly turned into a stream of light and disappeared quietly, revealing the real face hidden behind it in front of Aethylam and Rayminkai. The first empress of the Wiser Empire, Aethylam Wiser Illusia. I am Remurina, wiser and wiser. I'm sorry for my previous impudence, but I don't regret it, because this is my destiny. Remurina. Purple hair, a monotonous long dress, and a pair of legs that could walk on their own and relied on a wheelchair to move, completely shattering Aethylam's fantasy of her half-sister. Is it your name? You're someone who shares the wiser bloodline with me? Aethylam looked directly into Remurina's eyes, trying to find a flaw in her expression. However, the hermit princess, who had already made up her mind, would not easily reveal any flaws. Yes, Aethylam, my royal sister. Let's stop with the unnecessary pleasantries. Remurina directly interrupted Aethylam's probing and placed Aethylam's previous question in front of her. Royal sister, didn't you ask why I dragged Serene Troyat into this dispute? Why? Serene is just an ordinary person. Aethylam frowned and asked again. Ordinary person? Ha ha, what a joke. Serene, can you hear me? When Remurina heard Aethylam's words, she immediately laughed out loud. Amidst her laughter, Remurina gently stroked Dioscuri's cold armor. My lovely royal sister, Serene is not an ordinary person. You have to know that a young man who could live with the first princess of the empire for more than 10 years would not be an ordinary person in anyone's eyes, even if he is a heretic from Earth. No, even so, Serene is just an ordinary person. Shut up, Aethylam. Aethylam's defense was immediately stopped by Remurina. After stopping Aethylam, the mocking smile on the hermit princess's face gradually deepened. Royal sister, you're being arrogant. Serene was able to survive under the hostile gazes of the people around him because of your care. However, the inhumane abuse that Serene suffered over the years was also because of you. Nonsense. Aethylam angrily shouted. She did not believe Remurina's sophistry at all. Nonsense? Hee hee, my pure royal sister. I'll let you see the so-called reality. Remurina turned around, looked at Dioscuri, and called out softly. Serene, come out. Let your royal highness see the treatment that you have suffered over the years. As she finished speaking, Dioscuri's cockpit opened, and the person who walked out was none other than Serene Troyat. However, Serene, who appeared in front of Aethylam and lay Minkai, was a young man with lifeless eyes and a dull expression. TSK, that brat is under control. Kai, can you make him move later? Seeing Serene's appearance, State Zero immediately muttered to himself. Probably. Rei Minkai did not intervene in the conversation between the two princesses, but it did not mean that Rei Minkai would be affected by the two princesses in front of him. Hey, when the time comes, don't hesitate because of the princess. After getting Rei Minkai's confirmation, State Zero withdrew his thoughts and prepared for battle. Serene, Serene, raise your head and look at me. As soon as Ethelum saw Serene, she immediately called out. However, as usual, the young man did not respond to her call. What welcomed the princess was only a lifeless gaze, as well as a body that was covered in countless scars as her clothes fell off. How could this be? Unable to believe that Serene, who had been with her for more than 10 years, would suffer such inhumane treatment, Ethelum did not know what to say for a moment. Such a great opportunity. Remurina naturally would not miss it. How could this be? Royal sister, do you know? Ignorance is the greatest arrogance. As the first royal princess of the empire, the people around you will inevitably curry favor and respect you, so that one day, after you ascend the throne, you will soar to the sky and become an important minister of the empire. However, under such a plan, a heretic from Earth was able to gain the favor of you, the empress of the empire, without paying any price. How can this not make others jealous? Remurina's words pierced deeply into Ethelum's heart. Although it was harsh to the ears, Ethelum knew that it was true. No matter how innocent Ethelum was in the past, she could still notice that many times Serene would come to her with a red and swollen cheek or with difficulty in moving. Although she had asked, Ethelum did not take it to heart. Recalling the past, Ethelum's face gradually turned pale. The smile on Remurina's face also gradually became smug. Ethelum, what a joke. Such a person that you do not care about is the only one who is loyal to you among all of them. Let me ask you, how could such a loyal person not be involved in this war that started because of you? Ethelum subconsciously wanted to defend herself, but was stopped by a hand. Have you said enough? Princess Remurina. Rei Minkai acted in time and interrupted Remurina's attack on Ethelum. Rude person, now was not the time for you to speak. Remurina frowned, obviously aware of Rei Minkai's intention. I am sorry for my rudeness, but now I have some urgent matters to ask Princess Remurina. Rei Minkai's gaze did not fall on Remurina, Dioscuri, or Serene. Instead, he looked past Remurina and Dioscuri to the tunnel behind them. Remurina understood. As long as she saw Rei Minkai's eyes, she knew that the man who brought Ethelum here wasn't here for her. His target was someone else. You're looking for someone else? Yes. I wonder if you've met Princess Victoria? I have some urgent matters to ask the princess. Rude person. The princess is honorable. How can a reckless person like you meet her? Serene. With just a few words, Remurina gave up on the idea of continuing to force Ethelum, because she knew that compared to Ethelum, who only cared about the Weiss Empire, the man in front of her was the real enemy. He would not try to crack the surface power of the Weiss Empire, but directly attack the weakness. Princess Victoria must not fall into the hands of the other party. At Remurina's command, Serene, who had already become a puppet, leaped into the cockpit of Dioscuri with a leap. Dioscuri, start. LDNOH reactor, increase output. A stiff and cold voice came out from Serene's throat, and the screen in front of him displayed Ethelum's figure in front of Serene's eyes. However, the real Ethelum was no longer able to cause any ripples in Serene. Now, in his eyes, the real Ethelum was just an enemy who prevented him from being together with Ethelum. In the midst of the rising murderous aura, Serene Troyat, who once aspired to become Princess Ethelum's knight, raised his sword and swung it at Princess Ethelum. Target locked. Dioscuri, attack. Chapter 486. Serene, stop. It's me. It's me, Ethelum Vice Eliosia. Amidst the light from the plasma beam sword, the figure of the wild lion nimbly dodged the attack. Ethelum tightly held onto the safety bar in front of her, but the overload caused by the wild lion's rapid evasion pushed Ithilum into Rei Minkai's arms. Minkai, I'm afraid the little princess can't hold on. State Zero's voice sounded in Rei Minkai's mind. Rei Minkai, in the midst of the fierce battle, diverted some of his attention to look at Ithilum in his arms, and then nodded. State Zero, let's begin. Understood. Little princess, hold on. This time, State Zero's voice also reached Ithilum's ears. However, before Ithilum could react, a white light flashed in front of her eyes. The white light only appeared for a moment, but at this moment, Ithilum found that the things in front of her had undergone a subversive change unknowingly. The originally open cockpit turned into a fully enclosed cockpit in the blink of an eye. At the same time, Ithilum was surprised to find that she, who was originally pushed into Rei Minkai's arms by the overload, was now sitting alone in an unfamiliar driver's seat. Moreover, Rei Minkai, who was originally sitting behind her, was now sitting in the driver's seat in front of her. This Princess Ithilum. Sit tight. Before Ithilum's doubts could be answered, she was tied to the seat by the seat belts that popped out from both sides of the driver's seat. At the same time, the driver's seat tilted backward, which made Ithilum even more confused. The sudden change in front of her was obviously beyond her understanding. However, Rei Minkai and State Zero did not have the intention to answer her at this time. After preparing Ithilum as much as possible to resist the overload, the wild lion's form fully transformed into the hunting gull lion. The plasma engine on its back erupted at full power, and the moment the dazzling plasma flame burst out, the steel lion in blue armor suddenly turned into a bolt of lightning and rushed through the underground space. The scene displayed on the screen became blurry, and Azilim's vision gradually became blurry. It was too fast. This was the first time Ithilum had experienced such a fast speed on land. If it weren't for the fact that Esilam's physical fitness was excellent, he would have suffered from a series of discomfort due to the extremely fast speed of the hunting gulls. Roar. Between the blue lightning was the roar of the steel lion. Among them, there was also the sword light of the plasma beam sword. However, no matter how hard Serene tried to make Dioscuri swing his sword, he could not successfully hit the swift hunting gull. Of course, Dioscuri couldn't hit the lion, and the lion couldn't hurt him either. Relying on the autocannon below its neck, the hunting gull lion could not cause any damage to Dioscuri, who had activated the dimensional screen. Moreover, even if Rei Minkai tried to use the hunting gull lion's speed, he could not successfully attack Dioscuri's weakness. As soon as the hunting gull appeared behind Dioscuri, the two rocket fists it possessed would immediately close together, covering all the weak points on its back. Can Dioscuri do such a thing? Rei Minkai frowned slightly at the strangeness shown by the Martian version of Dioscuri. Do you want to use that trick? Facing the dimensional screen, State Zero proposed Rei Minkai's idea. That was to use the powerful power of the lambda drive system to break the dimensional screen in a miraculous way, just like the previous attack on the moon base. No, even if the dimensional screen is broken, it's over here. Rei Minkai shook his head and looked at the dome above his head. As long as the hunting gull lion broke out the powerful power of the lambda drive system in this place, this underground space would inevitably usher in the fate of collapse, leading to the fall of at least a large area of the upper city. That would undoubtedly be a disaster. Rei Minkai did not want to cause such terrible consequences, and Ithilum, who was sitting behind him, would certainly not agree with this approach. In this regard, State Zero also secretly muttered a few times and gave up. Of course, neither side wanted to continue this stalemate battle. But first, he wanted to see which side could not hold back first. The hunting gold-toothed lion dodged Dioscuri's sword and, in a flash, changed its direction and pounced on Dioscuri once more. It was the same trick again. But Dioscuri no longer blocked the hunting gull lion's attack with a closed fist like before. Instead, he chose to open all the missile pods on the side of his legs and launched all the missiles at once. The cold, murderous aura brought by the rising missiles made Rei Minkai's heart tremble. He instantly joined forces with State Zero to forcibly stop the hunting gull lion's forward movement and forced it to jump back quickly. In between a jump and a flip, the missiles that rose from the missile pods on Dioscuri's legs brushed past the hunting gull lion's shadow and went straight to the dome above his head. Not good. State Zero. Roar. Before the hunting gull lion landed, Ray Minkai immediately issued an alarm. Ray Minkai had scruples, but the other side had no scruples. The dome of this underground space was shattered by the explosion of the missile. Cracks ranging from the smallest to the largest tore through the entire earthen dome like a spiderweb. Countless gravel flooded this underground space like a torrential downpour. Facing the falling gravel, Ray Minkai made a prompt decision to give up the plan to continue attacking Dioscuri and avoid the collapse first. After all, the hunting gull lion did not have Dioscuri's perverted dimensional screen that could devour everything. Thus, in the rolling gravel, the hunting gull lion transformed into a blue lightning bolt. At this time, Ethelum, who had finally adapted to the overload caused by the hunting gull lion's rapid charge, finally had some free time to look at Dioscuri's position. That place had long been submerged by countless gravel. After an unknown period of time, the falling gravel gradually disappeared, and the rolling dust gradually stopped rolling. However, the surrounding vision could not return to normal in a short time. Crack! The gravel that covered the floor was savagely ravaged by a pair of giant steel claws, and the sharp teeth gleamed with a cold light that even the rolling dust could not hide. I hate that layer of force field. The steel lion raised its head slightly and looked at the area where the gravel was the most concentrated. State Zero could clearly feel that the annoying mech was still there, completely intact. I'm afraid that layer of force field will not be used again. Unlike State Zero's annoyance, Ray Minkai knew that although the rolling gravel interrupted the attack of the hunting gull lion, it also destroyed all of Dioscuri's external UAVs. Losing the UAVs that acted as the eyes when the dimensional screen was deployed was equivalent to losing the ability to deploy the dimensional screen. After all, without the eyes to observe the outside, Dioscuri, who was weak behind him, was undoubtedly a target waiting to be harvested by the hunting gull lion. Wait! Knight Captain! Remurina! Suddenly, Ethelum let out a cry of surprise. Before Dioscuri bombarded the dome, Remurina seemed to have stayed at the side. No, don't worry. Princess Ethelum. Princess Remurina is probably in Dioscuri's cockpit now. The rolling gravel did not take long. As Dioscuri reacted quickly, he would be able to use the dimensional screen as a shield to protect Remurina on the ground. After the rolling gravel stopped, he would be able to bring her into the cockpit. State Zero! Ray Minkai's eyes flashed, and he shouted, "Roar!" The hunting gull-toothed lion suddenly leaped to the right, narrowly avoiding a black flying object that tore through the rolling sand and attacked from the front. It was Dioscuri's rocket punch. Da-da-da-da! Without hesitation, the moment the hunting gull lion landed, a series of bullets burst out from the cannon below its neck, and a series of whistling shells were fired in the direction of the rocket punch. Everywhere the cannonballs passed, there were holes in the sand and dust. However, Dioscuri's figure was not behind the sand torn apart by the shells. Behind! Kai! As State Zero's voice sounded in Ray Minkai's mind, the hunting gull lion rolled on the ground and suddenly tore through the dust, and a plasma blade slashed at its back. Ooh! When the hunting gull and the long-toothed lion stood up, the roaring rocket fists converged with Dioscuri. TSK. Kai, what's going on? Now the dome has been blown away by them. State Zero snorted and raised his head slightly to look at the empty space above his head. The thing that Ray Minkai was worried about finally happened. In this regard, State Zero, who had no restrictions, was eager to try. Wait a little longer. The blue storm rose again. Even if the large and small gravel occupied more than half of the underground space, it was not a reason to stop the hunting gull lion from running. As fast as lightning and as fast as thunder, This was the hunting gull lion in Remurina's eyes. How is it possible? It's obviously surrounded by obstacles. How can this lion run so fast? Remurina, who was nestled in Slane's arms, could not believe her eyes. Slane, destroy it. Although she was shocked, Remurina still gave a cold order. Moreover, when she gave the order, her gaze landed on Slane's cold and stiff face, as if she was looking for any signs that Slane might resist. In the end, she was satisfied. Slane carried out her order without hesitation. Under Slane's control, missiles were shot out of the pod one after another, suppressing the possible movement range of the hunting gull lion to the minimum. Then, he waved the plasma blade in his hand and rushed forward. Boom! Boom! A series of explosions occurred in the path of the hunting gulls and the Longfong lion. TSK, this is so annoying. Kai, are you not done yet? State Zero was very unhappy with the bombardment from Dioscuri. Wait a little longer. The plasma blade kept sweeping away the sand and gravel obstacles between the hunting gull lion and Dioscuri. Amid the sparks of the melting sand and gravel, Dioscuri, who had the advantage of size, finally rushed to the front of the hunting gull lion. Gauda's huge body of more than 20 meters suddenly made Ethelum, who was sitting in the back seat, feel a sense of pressure, especially when the blazing plasma beam blade slashed down on her head at lightning speed. Ethelum couldn't help but close her eyes and wait for her fate to come. Roar. In the darkness brought by the closed eyes was a loud roar of a beast. In the roar that resounded throughout the underground space, Dioscuri's plasma blade did not fall on the hunting gull lion's head, but stopped in midair. No, that was not a pause. It was stopped. Dioscuri's slash was blocked by a pair of blades that shone with a pale blue glimmer. What? How is it possible? The lion changed. Impossible. Remurina looked up in shock from Strain's arms. She stared at the steel lion that was supposed to be wearing sky blue armor, but was now orange-red, like a ball of flames. As for the pair of blades that blocked the plasma beam sword, they were the blades carried on the back of this flaming steel lion. Strain, kill it, no matter what monster it is. Kill it for me. Looking at the steel lion that suddenly transformed, Remurina felt that things had gone beyond her expectations and control. Aldnoah reactor maximum output. Energy line link. Field frequency signal generator activated. Lightsword force field deployed. As Strain's cold and stiff voice sounded, Dioscuri's second plasma blade ejected a dazzling light and slashed horizontally at the orange-red steel lion. State Zero, go all out. Ray Minkai roared in an instant. The four plasma jet engines of the orange-red steel lion burst out at the same time with a brilliance that was not inferior to the plasma blade. Then, the moment the plasma blade hit the steel lion, the orange-red steel lion had already brushed past Dioscuri and rushed out 100 meters away. When the flame-like figure became clear again, it was a giant orange-red steel lion that was shining with a cold light all over its body. Destruction slash. Longfong lion, Zenata! Roar! As the lion roared, the missile pods on Dioscuri's legs exploded. Chapter 487. The cold light on the blade flowed slowly, as if it had a life of its own. The long-toothed lion, clad in flame-like steel armor, let out a low roar. This was not a threatening roar. It was a roar that suppressed the enemy and was about to win. In the previous confrontation, not only did Dioscuri's plasma beam sword fail to hit the long-toothed lion, but the long-toothed lion counterattacked and blew up the missile pod on its left leg. At the same time, the power of the explosion also blew up the left leg. Black smoke constantly rose from the broken leg. Dioscuri, who had lost his ability to support himself, retreated, and finally, with the help of the thrusters, he barely managed to float above the ground. Although he was temporarily freed from the predicament of being unable to move, it was not a long-term solution. Slain. In the battle between mechs, Remurina could not help at all. She did not understand why Dioscuri, who should have had the upper hand, was suddenly counterattacked by the long-toothed lion in an instant. Until Dioscuri pulled out the second plasma beam sword, the long-toothed lion could only struggle under Dioscuri's sword. Why? Questions flooded Remurina's mind like a tide. But even if the questions in her mind kept emerging, the battle still went on. Dioscuri, who had lost his left leg, waved the plasma beam sword in his hand and constantly attacked Shanita. However, the invincible plasma beam sword could not destroy Shanita's two seemingly thin but incomparably hard blades. The plasma beam sword could not even leave a mark on them. At the same time, every time the plasma beam sword collided with Shanita's blade, there would be signs of extreme instability. It was as if something terrible had happened, forcing the plasma bound by the force field generator to scatter and flee. The reason for this scene wasn't because of how hard the long-fanged lion Shanita's blade was. Every time Shanita waved his blade, State Zero quietly added the power of the lambda drive system to the blade. The moment the weak light that symbolized the power of the lambda drive system covered the blade, not only did the Longfang lion's blade possess an even stronger attack power, it also possessed a terrifying defensive power. As long as the enemy's strength was unable to break through State Zero's mental strength, then the blade of the long-fanged lion, Nita, was a terrifying weapon that could not be destroyed by any attack. Clang! After forcing Dioscuri back with a single sword strike, Nita raised the 5 swords of different lengths that acted as his mane and pointed them at Dioscuri. Final strike. State Zero's deep roar resounded. Ray Minkai nodded, indicating that he had no objections. Having lost his left leg, Dioscuri, who could only rely on the propulsion engine to maintain his posture, had undoubtedly reached the end of his fate. He only needed one strike. As long as the long-fanged lion launched another destructive attack, this time it would not be as simple as destroying one of Dioscuri's legs. Suddenly, a murderous aura rose from Shanita's body, awakening Remilina. She subconsciously grabbed Srain's collar. Even though Srain didn't give her any comfort at this moment, the warmth from Srain made her feel at ease. Srain, protect me. With such a simple sentence, Srain, who had been reduced to a puppet, immediately moved. Dioscuri raised his left hand, and the plasma beam sword in his hand was immediately thrown towards Shanita. When Shanita raised his blade to block the impact of the plasma beam sword, Dioscuri's left hand did not stop moving. He directly activated the propulsion engine at his elbow. Boom! Under the long tongue of flame was a thunderous rocket punch. The rocket punch took advantage of the opportunity when Shanita's vision was obscured by the dazzling plasma light and went straight for Shanita's head. In the next moment, just as the rocket fist was about to collide with the plasma beam sword's hilt, the plasma beam sword suddenly turned off all of its energy sources and fell straight to the ground. It brushed past the rocket fist that was rushing up from behind, creating an opening for him to attack the long-fanged lion's head. Be careful! The jet-black rocket-flying fist was like a fierce shadow, causing Athalam, who was sitting at the back, to cry out in surprise. Piece of cake. State Zero only smiled at Athalam's exclamation. He did not take Dioscuri's 2-stage attack seriously. Ray Minkai and State Zero's spirit resonated at a high level. The unique screen of the lambda drive system blocked the rocket punch. Boom! The rocket-flying fist smashed into the lambda drive screen, creating a series of rapid ripples. However, it was unable to tear open even the slightest wound on the lambda drive screen. Even the long-fanged lion Nada stood firmly in place, completely unaffected by the rocket-flying fist's ferocious attacks. However, this was not Dioscuri's plan, nor was it Slane's plan. First, he threw out the plasma beam sword, followed by the rocket fist. This wasn't Srain's plan. His true goal was the third attack that he had hidden. Under the orange-red flames was the huge steel body that was speeding forward. In the blink of an eye, while Shanita the long-toothed lion's attention was attracted by the rocket punch, Dioscuri, driven by Slane, circled to the rear left of Shanita, the long-toothed lion from the side at high speed. Here, Shanita's defense was definitely a loophole. When the blazing plasma beam sword tore through the air, there was a scorching wind and a terrifying scream. Under such a terrifying momentum, no one doubted that no one could survive under Dioscuri's plasma beam sword. However, reality was cruel. Under Riamulina's sparkling gaze, Serene's rather impressive move fell through. Just as Dioscuri was about to behead Nita, the blade on Nita's back suddenly turned and blocked Dioscuri's plasma beam sword in a split second. What? This lion can see the movement behind him? Riamulina's eyes widened as she looked at Shanita, who was still in a stalemate with the rocket punch. She did not believe that Shanita, who was dealing with the attack from the front with all his strength, would still have the energy to spare for the attack behind him. He's still a newbie after all. Slain. Lei Minkai glanced sideways at Dioscuri, who was blocked by the sword of the long-toothed lion, Skaneda. He sighed slightly and said, "Don't worry, Dioscuri. If it was slain many years later, it might have embarrassed me a little. But the current slain is still too immature." Lei Minkai's eyes flashed coldly as he growled, "State 0. Roar." At this moment, Shanita twisted his body, and all the plasma engines on his body instantly burst out with a thrust that exceeded his own limits, giving Shanita the powerful force to knock away the rocket punch that was in a stalemate with Dioscuri. The next moment, a cold sword light bloomed wildly from Shanita's body. In Riamulina's eyes, the moment Shanita knocked away the rocket punch, he turned into an orange-red storm and sent Dioscuri flying like a ball of flame. In the flash of the sword light, Dioscuri's right leg, which had already been smashed into pieces, was sent flying. Roar! Before Dioscuri, who was sent flying high, landed on the ground, a loud roar sounded, and Dioscuri was once again sent flying into the air. This time, it was Dioscuri's right hand. Except for his left hand, which had yet to return to his body, Dioscuri could only be described as a human stick now. Shanita, the long-toothed lion, did not give Dioscuri any time to land on the ground. As he rushed forward, Dioscuri's body was constantly smashed into pieces. The final blow. Among the pieces scattered all over the ground was Dioscuri, who had lost his head, hands, and feet. Even part of the armor on his body had been shattered. Lei Minkai knew that this was the time to deliver the final blow. But Ethelum, who was sitting behind him, did not stop Lei Minkai from delivering the final blow. The cold sword light quickly converged at the front of a long-fanged lion, the 5 swords that were pointing at Dioscuri. This must be Shanita's strongest attack at the moment. In order to prevent future troubles, Lei Minkai did not want to give the enemy a chance to get lucky. Roar! With a flash of sword light, Shanita rushed out. In front of him was Dioscuri, who had flown to the highest point and then turned to fall rapidly. Wait, Knight Captain. In an instant, when Shanita's swords were about to pierce Dioscuri, Ethelum, who had been silent all this time, suddenly tried to stop Lei Minkai. Lei Minkai did not pay attention to Ethelum's words. Instead, he chose to continue the operation to prevent future troubles. However, just as the Longfang lion's blade broke through Dioscuri's broken armor and was about to pierce into Dioscuri's cockpit, a voice suddenly rang out. "Hey, Dioscuri, pure white mountains, green grasslands. That is our hometown that we yearn for day and night." What? Singing? Princess? Ethelum, who had failed to stop Lei Minkai, subconsciously closed her eyes and did not look at Dioscuri, who had died tragically under Shanita's sword. She opened her eyes and looked in front of her in surprise. A figure had appeared on Shanita's sword. That appearance, that figure, undoubtedly, it was Princess Victoria, whom Ethelum was familiar with. Thanks to her, Shanita's swords stopped piercing into the cockpit. It was floating on the cold blade, gently singing a ballad in an unknown language. Ethelum could not understand the words of the ballad, but from the feeling of the ballad, it seemed to contain feelings of longing and nostalgia. What the hell is... Shut up. Ethelum could not understand the scene in front of her, but what made her more frightened was that Lei Minkai, who was sitting in front of her, was releasing a terrifying aura that made Ethelum unable to move. Under this aura, Ethelum's body was stiff, and she could not even move a finger. Moreover, she, who was good at using various etiquette words, could not even utter a single syllable. Unable to move, Ethelum, who could not speak, could only look at the knight in front of her in horror. "You are not her." "Shut up." Traces of blood suddenly rose from Rei Minkai's hands and spread up along his arms. When it reached his shoulders, it separated into two streams. One stream spread up along his neck, the other stream spread down, eroding his body and feet. As the traces of blood occupied Rei Minkai's eyes, Shanita, who was like a flame, was wrapped in a black-red, flame-like aura. "Roar! Kai! What are you doing, you bastard? Stop!" The lion's roar was filled with pain and anger. This state had appeared before, but because of the long span of time, not to mention Rei Minkai, even State Zero himself might have forgotten. In a knight's duel that decided Rei Minkai's fate, Rei Minkai also appeared in this state. Comparing the two, it was so similar, yet so different. First, in the face of the threat of death, Rei Minkai took the initiative to seek survival in death. Second, now, Rei Minkai, under the influence of that familiar face and the influence of this ballad, triggered the current situation. Frenzy. That terrifying blood-red line that was constantly spreading along Rei Minkai's skin made Ethelium extremely fearful. But Ethelum, who was dominated by fear, could not open her mouth to remind Rei Minkai to wake up. The song was still going on. Princess Victoria, who was floating on the blade, undoubtedly appeared in the form of a holographic projection. Therefore, she did not feel the horror of Rei Minkai up close like Ethelum. Kill. Blood-red eyes, spread by the blood-red lines, looked particularly ferocious on the face, which was full of cold, killing intent and complete madness. Under this madness, the long-fanged lion, Shunida, who was originally wearing orange-red armor, turned into a terrifying beast shrouded in darkness that seemed to be able to swallow everything in the world in the blink of an eye. At this moment, the long-fanged lion, Shunida, seemed to have become a black hole. The glimmer scattered from the broken hole could not illuminate it all. Even when it entered the surroundings of its body, it would be swallowed by it. As the blade was slowly pulled out from Dioscuri's body, the black beast raised its head, and the blood-red eyes stared at the figure floating in the air. "Come back. Go back to our hometown." When the song stopped, Princess Victoria opened her arms towards the long-fanged lion. One step, two steps. The huge black beast raised its feet and walked in front of Princess Victoria. It raised its huge claws and slapped Dioscuri, who had fallen to the ground. Die! Chapter 488. Reynolds slowly closed his eyes, no longer looking at the projection screen floating in front of him. That night is really a surprise. I didn't expect him to have such means. Reynolds' mocking laughter rang softly and reached the ears of Miss Q, who was standing next to him with a gloomy expression. Miss Q's mouth moved, but she didn't say anything. What led to the current situation was undoubtedly the decision made by Miss Q herself. The appearance of Princess Victoria was Miss Q's idea. Her purpose was to help Dioscuri defeat that annoying lion. But she never expected that Princess Victoria's singing would cause such a shocking change to the lion. Even Miss Q herself didn't expect such a development. What the hell is this lion? How can there be such a mechanical body in that world? If this situation had happened when Miss Q destroyed Sot's mechanical beast world, Miss Q probably wouldn't have been able to destroy this world full of mechanical beasts in a short period of time. While she was puzzled, a stream of light appeared from the void. This stream of light was like a waterfall from the ninth heaven. As it poured down from the sky, two figures appeared behind Miss Q and Reynolds. Reynolds, who heard the movement, opened his eyes slightly and looked over. He found that it was Remurina and her knight, Serene. The former was carried in the latter's arms like a princess. "Miss Q, You gave that thing to Princess Remurina? Reynolds saw the whole process of the black, giant lion smashing Dioscuri into pieces. Therefore, the reason why Remurina and Serene, who should have died, appeared here in one piece was because Miss Q gave them the life-saving item. Yes. Do you have any objections? After all, Princess Remurina is our collaborator. As for the personal safety of our partners, we have always done our best to protect them. Miss Q looked at Reynolds and didn't find any trace of dissatisfaction on his face. She then turned to Remurina and nodded slightly. Thank you for your hard work. Princess Remurina, how do you feel now? Remurina moved her head slightly, as if resisting the dizziness caused by the teleportation. I'm a little dizzy, but I feel fine. The purple-haired princess, who had her arms around Serene's neck, smiled and thanked Miss Q. Thank you very much. Miss Q, no, this is what I should do. Any friendly person who helps us will be our friend. For our friends, we won't hold back when we can help them. Thank you very much. After Remurina thanked Miss Q again, she raised her head and looked over Serene's shoulder. She looked behind him, the building with the hyperspace door that was exactly the same as the one deep underground of the moon base. Are the preparations complete? Yes. All the preparations had been completed. Princess Remulina, this is all thanks to your help. With a smile on her face, Miss Q moved the chair beside her to Remolina and Serene's side, so that Remolina could rest while Serene didn't need to carry Remolina and stand there in a daze. Although Serene was now in a controlled puppet state, being able to preserve a trace of physical strength was also beneficial for the next operation. Then, it's time for Miss Q and Mr. Reynolds to leave this place. Remurina sat steadily on the chair and raised her head to look at Miss Q and Reynolds. Reynolds' eyes glinted when he heard Remurina's words. He heard the meaning behind Remurina's words. The next operation was called an operation, but in fact, it was just an escape that had been planned for a long time. Reynolds didn't know how Miss Q knew about this world, but from her arrangement, this world was probably used as a backup escape node from the beginning. As for Remurina's meaning, it should be that she wouldn't follow Miss Q and leave this world. Princess Remulina, what do you mean? Miss Q was a little hesitant. She naturally knew what Remurina meant. However, the bold words she had just uttered were undoubtedly a slap to her face from Remulina's backhand. Remurina shook her head slightly and reached out to hold Serene's right hand. Feeling the warmth in Serene's hand, the purple-haired princess didn't look at Miss Q. Instead, she raised her head to look at Serene's somewhat dull face. Miss Q, Mr. Reynolds, you can leave. Although this place is very unfamiliar to me, it's still my home. In the end, let me stay here. Remurina's words made Miss Q stunned. When Miss Q first met this hidden princess many years ago, she had already begun to see her as her partner and planned to recommend her to the Destiny Council when the time was right. But she never thought that at this critical moment, Remurina would make such a decision. Princess Remulina, don't you want to think clearly? Miss Q frowned. She didn't want to lose the partner she had set her eyes on just like that. No, Miss Q, I know what you mean, and I also understand your intentions. But this is my home. Please understand the longing of an orphan who has been wandering outside for more than 10 years and isn't recognized by him. With that said, Miss Q gave up on the idea of continuing to persuade Remurina. As a woman, Miss Q understood Remurina. After all, to a certain extent, the two's experiences were so similar. A pitiful woman who was abandoned by the country she was loyal to and betrayed by her superior. An illegitimate child who wasn't recognized by the royal family, and a pitiful girl who was used by an ambitious man. Because they were in the same boat, Miss Q made the previous decision. Now it was time for everything to end. Boom! All of a sudden, a series of violent explosions swept over. It was a rock wall. The rock wall on the right side of this underground space was broken by a powerful force. And the body of this force was the steel lion shrouded in darkness. Roar! A murderous roar resounded through the underground space. That pair of scarlet eyes pierced through the scattered rocks and landed on Miss Q. At this moment, the hairs on Miss Q's body stood up involuntarily, causing her to subconsciously take 2 steps back. This damn beast. Why won't it obediently die? Miss Q clenched her teeth and stared fiercely at the black lion. Miss Q, time's up. Leonard, who was also filled with hatred for the lion, didn't lose his mind. Instead, he turned around and walked towards the prepared hyperspace door. Princess Remurina, don't you want to reconsider? Miss Q asked again. No, Miss Q, someone has to stay behind. Remurina's meaning didn't change. Also, I still have something to say to Royal Sister. This bit of time won't delay your operation, right? Then, Remurina pulled Laslian's hand. Laslian, accompany me to see our Royal Sister. Slime followed her instructions and carried Lemurina again. He walked more than 10 meters away from Miss Q and headed towards the giant black lion. Royal Sister, I know you're inside. Say something. Roar. The response to Remurina wasn't Aseelam's voice, but the black lion's roar in its sharp claws. Hum. A black shadow flashed and a cold light slashed towards Remurina. However, in the next moment, an invisible force field blocked between the black lion and Remurina. Princess Remurina. The force field can only block this monster for 3 minutes. You have to pay attention to the time. Miss Q glanced at the giant black lion that was pushed back by the force field and couldn't help but remind Remurina. Okay, I know. Also, Miss Q, Mr. Leonard. Have a safe trip. Hearing Remurina's farewell, Miss Q couldn't help but stop in her tracks. Miss Q. Leonard, who arrived at the hyperspace door first, glanced at Miss Q and then looked at the black lion that was constantly trying to break through the force field and slap Remurina under its claws. Miss Q didn't respond, but raised her right hand. Victoria, go accompany Remurina on her last journey. A faint light appeared and Princess Victoria's figure appeared in front of Miss Q's eyes. Understood. When Victoria's figure reappeared, she was already by Lemurina's side. Miss Q, isn't that what Mr. J gave you? Yes, but it's useless now. The data Mr. J wanted has all been obtained. After that, Miss Q turned to look at the black lion. Monster, the next time we meet, it's either you die or I die. Miss Q's hate-filled eyes were undoubtedly the catalyst that infuriated the black lion. Roar. Waves of frenzied attacks were launched towards the force field that blocked the black lion from slapping Remurina, Miss Q, and Leonard into a pulp. Under the frenzied attacks, the invisible force field suddenly began to flicker. Obviously, the force field could no longer withstand the impact from the black lion. Ethel Lamb, who was sitting in the cockpit, was still unable to move or speak. She could only look at Remurina, who was in Slane's arms, calmly look at the black lion and herself, who was sitting in the cockpit, unable to move at all. Sister, I'm so envious of you. Not only can you stand under the sun as the princess of the Weiss Empire, but you also have Slane, who is extremely loyal to you. Remurina looked at the frenzied black lion and gently raised her hand to stroke Slane's face. To be honest, when I first saw Slane, I was very curious. Why is this young man so loyal to you when he's clearly an earthling from the Weiss Empire? While speaking, Remurina didn't pay attention to the black lion or even whether Ethel Lamb, who was sitting inside, was affected by her words. She just turned her head and gently looked at Slane's face. Slane, if I could meet you first, would the person you fell in love with be me? But it's not bad. At least, in the end, you'll still be by my side and not by my sister's side. Crack. The force field that blocked the black lion's frenzied attack finally couldn't withstand the frenzied attack and shattered. Roar. Like the deafening roar. There's also a huge body with bursts of cold aura that rushed in front of Remurina in the blink of an eye. A black shadow in the wind slammed down on Remurina's head. Swoosh. The black shadow was blocked, and the one who blocked it was Princess Victoria, who came to Remurina's side under the order of Miss Q. Princess. You? The current Princess Victoria wasn't a holographic projection, but a real human with a physical body. Sorry, Your Highness. Perhaps this will scare you. But please let me use this form to accompany you to the end. Thank you. But sister doesn't seem to be willing to talk to us anymore. Then this is the end. Understood. Then goodbye. Your Highness. Goodbye. Princess. Nice to meet you. As she said goodbye, Princess Victoria's body lit up, and a terrifying energy wave set off a monstrous wave. This was the power that Princess Victoria was born with. Remurina didn't know what was going on, but she knew that this would be the last stop in her life. Hold me tight. My knight, Slain. As Remurina called out softly, Slain's hands quietly tightened and hugged Remurina tightly in his arms. This was the last trace of warmth that Remurina could feel in this world. Thank you, Slain. However, in Slain's warm embrace, Remurina, who was shrouded in faint light, didn't see the tears rolling down Slain's face. Slain, this young man, who was controlled by Princess Victoria's singing, finally woke up when Princess Victoria triggered her own power to self-destruct. However, the young man didn't push away the girl in his arms. Instead, he looked at the giant black lion with tears streaming down his face. He knew that sitting in the cockpit of this crazy giant black lion was the princess he had been dreaming of, Iziram Visser Iliosia. Your Highness, Princess Iziram. So you're still alive? Yes. I'm your Princess Iziram. Slain, my knight. If there's an afterlife, maybe we'll be together. Slain's last call only received a response from the girl in his arms. Boom! A huge explosion. A monstrous energy tsunami. At this moment, it crazily impacted this underground space. The turbulent energy not only erased Victoria, Remurina, and Slain from this world in an instant, but also engulfed the giant black lion. At the same time, Miss Q and Reynold, who were standing next to the hyperspace door, rushed into the hyperspace door with all their might. Quick, let's go. Watch out behind. As soon as Reynold's warning sounded, a black shadow overtook Reynold and rushed into the hyperspace door. As his horrified eyes lit up, Reynold instinctively rolled on the ground and rolled into the hyperspace door in an embarrassing posture. For Reynold, this was a last resort, because when the black shadow passed him just now, Reynold, who had sharp eyes, had already seen the appearance of the black shadow clearly. That was Miss Q, who had lost her lower body. At this moment, there was only one thought in Reynold's mind. That lion was not killed by the explosion. Chapter 489. The huge hole that swallowed the Weiss Empire. The ruins that were almost razed to the ground, and the traces of energy left in the hole told the people who were lucky enough to escape this sudden and terrifying explosion just now what the boundary between life and death was. The Utopia system is overloaded. The force field is low, unable to provide any protection for Avalon in a short time. The power furnace output has fallen below 30%. Avalon's current height cannot be maintained now. Please instruct. Captain. On the dim bridge, panicked voices kept ringing. Teresa, who was sitting in the command seat, held her right hand tightly, trying to use all her strength to suppress her trembling right hand. Then, he tried his best to keep his tone calm as he loudly gave out orders. Avalon, lower the height. Confirm the extent of damage to Avalon and the status of all the team members as soon as possible. Correspondent, contact the Knight Captain immediately. The area where the explosion just happened should be the area where the Knight Captain is. Quick! Under Teresa's orders, everyone's panic gradually stabilized. Although the atmosphere on the bridge was still solemn and depressing, overall, it had been stabilized by Teresa's efforts. After Teresa breathed a sigh of relief, she subconsciously turned her head to look at the guest's seat next to her. Unexpectedly, she saw a scene that made her feel a little flustered. Crystal tears gently streaked across Euphemia's face and silently dripped onto the white dress, wetting it. And the eyes that were shedding tears were lifeless at the moment. Your Majesty. Teresa's heart, which had been slightly relieved, was once again in high spirits. In the explosion just now, first, Ray Minkai disappeared, then Avalon was affected by the explosion and almost lost all mobility. Now, in this almost desperate situation, if anything happened to Euphemia, who was the backbone of Avalon, the consequences would be unimaginable. Your Majesty, Your Majesty, Your Majesty, wake up! Teresa looked around and did not dare to make too much noise, lest the bridge members who were doing emergency treatment discover the situation here. No matter how Teresa called out, Euphemia could not respond to her voice. Teresa gritted her teeth and had no choice but to use another method to wake up Euphemia. But just as Teresa reached out her right hand and tried to touch Euphemia's shoulder to wake up Euphemia, Euphemia's lifeless eyes suddenly lit up. At the same time, Euphemia raised her right hand and pointed forward. Your Majesty, Euphemia's sudden movement made Teresa's right hand freeze in midair. The next second, Teresa abruptly turned her head and followed Euphemia's finger to the front. Ahead, in front of Avalon, the direction that Euphemia was pointing at was the large hole that had just occurred after the big explosion. That is the big hole formed by the explosion. Your Majesty. The Knight Captain is still alive. Teresa's to answer to her question, because in the next moment, Euphemia's finger that was pointing forward loosened and drooped down weakly. At the same time, Euphemia's eyes, which had just been shining with light, suddenly closed. She swayed and fainted. Your Majesty, Teresa exclaimed and quickly got up to support Euphemia. However, she didn't expect to hear the words that Euphemia was still muttering even though she was unconscious. I will become his land and see him as my land. What? Hearing this, Teresa froze for a moment. She did not understand why Euphemia would say this when she was unconscious, but from the literal meaning, it seemed to be an oath made by both sides when they made a lifelong vow. Is it the Knight Captain? Teresa clenched her hands and clenched her teeth tightly. The situation in front of her came too suddenly. She did not expect the enemy to be so crazy as to cause a terrifying explosion in the depths of the palace. Not only did the palace directly erase it, but the city was also razed to the ground. The people who gathered near the palace under the influence of the song also disappeared from this world with the disappearance of the palace. That was nearly 1 million people. Your Majesty, after the explosion, Royd, Cecil, Mira, Nami, and others who quickly rushed to the bridge were shocked when they saw Teresa supporting the unconscious Empress. Doctor, quick, take Her Majesty to the medical room. Leave it to me. After Teresa quickly arranged things, she entrusted Euphemia to Royd and Cecil. Captain, brother, how is brother? Is there any news? After Mira helped Cecil put Euphemia on the stretcher, she looked at Teresa, who had returned to her seat, and asked. Teresa's eyes darkened, and she shook her head slightly. I don't know. In the explosion just now, let alone the Knight Captain, even the Lionheart Knight team, we sent out lost contact with. Now, what we must do is to ensure Avalon's navigation ability. Sorry, Miss Mira. Mira clenched her hands tightly and looked at the huge hole in front of her that almost swallowed the entire city with tears in her eyes. She knew, without a miracle, no one could survive the explosion that erased a city from the map. I know. Now, I'll go to the power furnace area to help restore Avalon's navigation ability. The worry in her heart did not disappear at all, but Mira knew very well what she should do now. So, Mira, who suppressed the worry in her heart, pulled Nami up, turned around, and ran out of the bridge to find the area where the power furnace was located as quickly as possible. Only by restoring Avalon's navigation ability could Avalon find everyone in the shortest amount of time possible. Captain, the signal has recovered a little. Now we have received signals from most of the surviving Lionheart Knight. What about the Knight Captain? Teresa was overjoyed and quickly asked. Even a mass-produced Lionheart Knight was still equipped with a radiation shield with excellent defensive capabilities. As long as the pilot reacted fast enough, he would be able to seize the chance of survival in the explosion just now. No, Not yet. Now we are strengthening the signal search. But because there is still an unknown interference signal left in the center of the explosion, we can't conduct a signal search in the center of the explosion area. Hearing this result, Teresa's heart was slightly relieved. However, as far as the current situation was concerned, the fact that most of the Lionheart Knight could survive was undoubtedly a boost to the morale of Avalon. Recall all the surviving Lionheart Knight. In addition, if they can find a Lionheart Knight who can't move, they can bring him back. Teresa hesitated when she said the second half of the sentence, but she still gave the order. Yes, the only thing left is to wait for Avalon's navigation ability to be restored and to find the whereabouts of the Knight Captain. Alas, the world is unpredictable. The blue sky, slowly rising from the eastern horizon, sprinkling its own light on the mortal world and driving away the darkness of the sun. White clouds surrounded the mountain peak. Under their feet was the platform that seemed to allow mortals to touch the blue sky. Ray Minkai, who was in the middle of it, looked a little confused. He seemed to have forgotten something. He didn't know when this scenery that could only be seen in the heavenly palace appeared in front of him. He had been standing on his platform that was adjacent to the white clouds, overlooking the green mountains and clear waters below. Waiting for Ray Minkai. There was only waiting in his mind. It wasn't until a voice sounded that his time began to flow. Kai, what are you looking at? A voice. It was a voice that Ray Minkai was very familiar with, but Ray Minkai couldn't remember her name. Looking at the sky, looking at the mountain, Ray Minkai spoke, but it was not what Ray Minkai was thinking or speaking. It was as if the current Ray Minkai was just a bystander living in the body of the person named Ray Minkai. Yes, no matter how many times I come here, the scenery here always makes me feel relaxed and happy. Kai, looks like we picked a good time this time. As the sun rose, a gust of wind blew towards them, gently blowing up the dress of the woman who slowly walked to Ray Minkai's side. As the hem of her dress fluttered, the woman walked to Ray Minkai's side and affectionately held his arm. She said softly, Kai, I wonder how many more times we'll be able to see this beautiful scenery with our own eyes in the future. There will be. In the future, there will be. Ray Minkai's voice was firm. However, Ray Minkai, who was living in this body, was unable to see the appearance of the woman holding his arm. He could only see her pink hair and the white dress she was wearing. She gently raised her jade-like finger and tapped Ray Minkai's lips. You're the one who said it. Kai, don't forget. Yes. Ray Minkai's clean answer made the woman laugh softly. However, although the laughter was pleasant to the ears, it caused a change in the entire world. The slowly rising sun suddenly froze, and the green mountains and rivers below lost all their color in the blink of an eye, engulfed by the deathly stillness of gray. Kacha! In the next second, a crack suddenly appeared in the blue sky. Moreover, more cracks followed. Ray Minkai was shocked and subconsciously wanted to reach out to grab the girl beside him and turn around to run. However, he had forgotten that he was just a shadow that was living in a body and watching from the sidelines. Kai, don't forget. Her jade-like finger once again tapped Ray Minkai's lips, and that soft voice softly reached Ray Minkai's ears. I will become your land and treat you as my land. Don't forget. Kai, don't forget. Boom. Under the gentle reminder of the girl, the world was destroyed. Witnessing the destruction of the world, Ray Minkai suddenly opened his eyes under a sweeping sense of weightlessness, only to find that he was in the familiar cockpit of the teethed Lion Zero. Is this considered to be back to reality? Ray Minkai, who was panting, raised his right hand, clenched it, and felt the power bursting out from the depths of his body. Along the way, Ray Minkai's eyes involuntarily moved to his right arm. There, that familiar, soft touch was still clearly visible. In fact, Ray Minkai's nostrils seemed to still have a trace of the smell of the illusory realm, which he didn't know if was a dream or an illusion. Kai, you're awake? State Zero's voice came from the side, and at the same time, With a flash of light, State Zero's white cat form appeared in front of Rei Minkai's eyes. Yes, I'm awake. I had a dream. Rei Minkai shook his head, trying to wake himself up a little. A dream? It seems that you should have dreamed of something. To Rei Minkai's surprise, the white cat State Zero seemed to have noticed something. State Zero, what did you find? State White Cat Zero chuckled and waved its right paw. The cockpit of the teethed Lion Zero opened, allowing Rei Minkai to clearly see the surroundings of the teethed Lion Zero. In Rei Minkai's memory, the teethed Lion Zero's environment should be in an underground space. However, at this moment, what Rei Minkai saw was a huge pit that was blasted out of the ground by something. Wait, if our location is correct, we should be in the Weiss Empire's royal city now. Suddenly, Rei Minkai's eyelids twitched wildly. His memory stopped when Princess Victoria appeared again and stopped him. The current situation had already exceeded his expectations. Royal City? It has been blown away. White Cat State Zero shook its head and looked at the back seat. Fortunately, the little princess fainted in the explosion and did not see her royal city being blown away with her own eyes. It can be considered a great fortune in misfortune. With that, White Cat State Zero looked back at Rei Minkai. Minkai, you really don't remember anything. I only remember the memory of Princess Victoria appearing again. Hey, it seems that Minkai, you have also gone completely berserk. Berserk? White Cat State Zero's mocking laughter reminded Rei Minkai of the feeling at the moment when his memory was interrupted. It was really like what White Cat State Zero said. A force that he could not control erupted from the depths of his body, directly dispersing his consciousness and firmly controlling his body to attack the enemy frantically. Do you remember? I didn't expect her face to have such an unexpected effect on you. Rei Minkai shook his head and suddenly looked at White Cat State Zero and asked State Zero, do you know a saying? A saying. White Cat State Zero tilted its head. It is the saying, I will become your land, and you will be my land. In an instant, White Cat State Zero's expression was sluggish. Until Avalon's figure appeared at the edge of the huge pit, White Cat State Zero sighed secretly. Kai, this is the oath used by both men and women in our hometown when they made a vow. Chapter 490. Through the glass. Rei Minkai looked at Euphemia, who had fallen into a deep sleep under the protection of many life support systems. Knight Commander. According to the inspection report, Her Majesty has fallen into a coma caused by unknown causes. Based on the equipment and technology on Avalon, I am afraid it is impossible to find out what caused Her Majesty to fall into a coma. All we can do is to maintain Her Majesty's vital signs. Teresa's face was very pale. The situation of Avalon, Euphemia's coma, and even the follow-up work made this 16-year-old girl feel a great deal of pressure. Fortunately, as one of the commanders, Rei Minkai survived the terrible explosion that razed the entire city to the ground. Unknown causes? Rei Minkai shook his head secretly and looked at White Cat State Zero lying on his shoulder. State Zero, do you know what happened? White Cat State Zero pondered for a moment. Teresa, did Her Majesty Euphemia say anything before she fell into a coma? Teresa frowned and carefully recalled what had happened before, but after searching for a while, she couldn't find anything suspicious. However, she didn't dare to say what she had heard with certainty. I remember Her Majesty muttering a sentence when she was in a coma, I will become his land, and he will be my land. As soon as this sentence came out, Rei Minkai was stunned. Sure enough, White Cat State Zero heard this sentence and sighed slightly. Although this was an accident, your Princess Highness will be fine. Rei Minkai did not speak, but his gaze gradually moved down and fell on the pendant on White Cat State Zero's neck. It was the culprit that caused the destruction of the Weiss Empire's capital, a world fragment from the hometown of Rei Minkai and White Cat State Zero. The reason it was embedded in the pendant was that White Cat State Zero was not ready to retrieve it yet. This was because this fragment seemed to have been tampered with by someone, causing the white cat to be unable to retrieve it as smoothly as before. Is it because of the fragments? Ray Minkai asked. White Cat State 0 stretched out its paw and scratched the pendant hanging on its neck. Probably. As for the specifics, he would have to return to the City of Stars to know. After all, the facilities of the Authority are better than those of Avalon. While they were talking, the white cat's paw was still scratching the pendant on its neck. If it were not for the fact that there was no way to retrieve the fragment into its body, the White Cat State 0 would not have let this necklace hang around its neck. If that's the case, we can only make an accurate judgment after we return to Star Glory City. Although Euphemia's situation wasn't close to a crisis, the current situation was bad enough. Captain Teresa, what is the situation in Avalon now? I'm afraid this explosion will cause a lot of trouble for Avalon, right? Indeed. Now, Avalon's contribution is low. Other than barely maintaining the basic navigation ability, it can't perform space jump or even hyperspace travel. In addition, the Lionheart Knight, who can return to the team, has all returned. Captain Juhu Koichiro, Inazuka Inafan, and Netsuin Yunko have all returned safely. Only the basic navigation ability is left. How embarrassing. I didn't expect Avalon's first voyage to encounter such a situation. Ray Minkai remembered that this warship was in the middle of a training mission for its first voyage. Unexpectedly, it encountered such a situation. How much is the loss of the Lionheart Knight? Although the radiation shield of the Lionheart Knight is strong enough, the closer to the center of the explosion, the greater the test the radiation shield faces. Teresa was silent for a moment and slowly said, now that they have returned to the team, there are a total of 15 pilots, regardless of whether they are seriously injured or not. A quarter? 15. This is a terrible loss. Oh, right. What about Fianna? In the laboratory, White Cat State 0 glanced at Ray Minkai, as if despising the person who forgot his subordinates. Is that so? It seems that my memory is getting worse. Ray Minkai laughed self-deprecatingly. In fact, Ray Minkai could not be blamed for forgetting Fianna, the hidden chess piece arranged by Remurina's side. In that berserk state, Ray Minkai could not control his actions at all, and could not even keep his consciousness clear. Fortunately, Fianna left Remurina's side unknowingly during the fierce battle and retrieved the technical information kept in the central system of the Imperial capital. Captain Knight, please don't belittle yourself. After experiencing that explosion, no matter who it is, I'm afraid that they will suffer some after effects. Teresa glanced at Ray Minkai's self-deprecating smile and could not help but comfort him. That's true. Compared to those who died in the explosion, we are really lucky. Ray Minkai shrugged his shoulders. Right. Captain Teresa, are there any survivors in this city? In the end, Teresa shook her head. Her face showed a trace of regret and sympathy. Captain Knight, I'm sorry. Under the influence of the mysterious song, almost all the people in this city who can move independently have gathered in the palace area. The answer was undoubtedly cruel. Is that so? Nearly 1 million people were annihilated along with the destruction of this city. After Princess Aziram wakes up, I'm afraid she can't accept it, right? In fact, it was just as Ray Minkai speculated. Under the treatment of the medical chamber, Aziram, who witnessed Ray Minkai going berserk and Remurina blowing up the entire city, finally slowly opened her eyes. Before she felt better, Aziram, who was worried about the capital of the Weiss Empire and the city where she was born and grew up, stood on the observation deck of Avalon accompanied by Ray Minkai. Sorry, Your Highness Princess Aziram. This result is not what we want. The huge pit that destroyed the entire city. There were also the broken buildings scattered on the edge of the pit. They were all telling Aziram, the Weiss Empire that she knew no longer existed. The same was true for the nearly 1 million people living in the capital. This was the scene of death in Aziram's eyes. How could this be? Remurina, how could my sister do such a terrible thing? Aziram's weak body collapsed, and the irresistible dizziness broke through Azirum's consciousness at this moment. "Your Highness Princess Azirum," Idalizo, the little follower, exclaimed. He hurriedly stepped forward and tried to support Idalizo, who was about to faint. Unfortunately, the petite Idalizo did not have enough strength to support Idalizo. Fortunately, Lei Minkai, who was prepared for this, took a big step forward and supported Athylum. "Your Highness Princess Azirum, are you okay? Why don't you go back to the medical chamber and rest? I'm afraid you won't last long in your current state." Rei Minkai's persuasion did not move Azirum's heart. On the contrary, the weakness in her body didn't make her want to back off. "No, Knight Captain, can I go down and take a look? I want to stand on this land, the land that used to be the capital of the Weiss Empire, and see the city that I grew up in with my own eyes. Your Highness Princess Azirum, please don't at this time." Before Adalizo, who reached out to support Azirum, could finish her persuasion, she could not help but cry. Yes, the capital of the Weiss Empire was not only the city where Azirum grew up, but also the city where Adalizo, who had always been an unknown follower, lived. Adalizo, who was trying hard to hold back her tears, and Azirum, who was pale with sadness in her eyes, tried her best to control herself and not let herself cry. Both of them made Rei Minkai sigh secretly. "Okay, it's just for a while, Your Highness Princess Azirum. Your body is not strong enough to move around outside for a long time. Please forgive me." "Yes, I know. Thank you very much. Knight Captain, thank you very much for your help all this time." Although it was a scene of devastation and dead silence outside, there was a search team from Avalon in the ruins, looking for resources that could help restore Avalon. When these team members saw Rei Minkai, Azirum, and Adalizo's small airship landing in the ruins, they stopped what they were doing and saluted Rei Minkai, who walked down from the airship. "Go do what you are doing." Rei Minkai waved his hand, indicating that the search team did not need to care about them, and turned to help Azirum down the airship. "Sorry, Avalon's loss is a bit big. We have to look for resources that may be useful in the ruins." Azirum looked at the search team a few times, turned to look around, and nodded slowly. "No, don't mind. Knight Captain, as long as it can help Avalon, just take it." After a pause, Azirum signaled Adalizo and declined Rei Minkai's help. The two petite figures, one tall and one short, walked towards the nearby ruins. Seeing this, Rei Minkai could only follow. It seems that the explosion really hurt this little girl. White Cat State Zero, who was lying on Rei Minkai's shoulder, looked around the silent ruins. Yes, not to mention Azirum, even Rei Minkai did not expect Rimurina to be so decisive. Although in the original timeline, Rimurina, who was jealous of Azirum, wanted to kill Azirum, but she chose to give up in the end. But now, Rimurina, who seemed to retain the most basic moral values, blew up the entire city in one fell swoop. What should we do next? Kai, this is a very big problem. White Cat State Zero's question made Rei Minkai stop writing the script. He did not want Azirum, who was walking in front of him, to hear the conversation. What should we do? Let's fix Avalon first, let it recover the space jump, and even the ability to travel through time and space, and then talk about it? And then, the destruction of the capital is enough to symbolize the destruction of the Weiss Empire. Just relying on the team of less than 10,000 people on the moon base, I'm afraid it's not enough to maintain the balance of power with the Earth Alliance army, right? White Cat State Zero shook its small head, making the pendant inlaid with fragments shake slightly. Even if the moon base has an overwhelming technological suppression, the Earth Alliance army can use the advantage of numbers to wipe it out. The only question is whether the price paid for this is enough to make the Earth Alliance army determined. Yes, Orbit 37 Knight was almost destroyed in the Battle of the Moon Base. Coupled with the fact that the entire Weiss Empire was directly wiped off the map, the Weiss Empire was probably unable to maintain an overwhelming advantage over the Earth Alliance army. The situation was reversed. And the reason for this situation was Rei Minkai's side. "Do you want me to bring these tens of thousands of people back?" Ray Minkai understood the meaning of White Cat State Zero. This was undoubtedly a choice that made Ray Minkai's heart beat faster. Bringing back Ethylum, who represented the last of the Weiss bloodline, would definitely add a powerful force to the construction of the Britannia Empire. Moreover, Euphemia could once again divide the power in the hands of the Empire's dignitaries by arranging the whereabouts of Ethylum's people. With such a simple thought, he could kill two birds with one stone. But would Ethylum agree? Would Fermion and Coludio of the Moon Base agree? Giving up the identity of the Weiss Empire and joining the arms of the Britannia Empire, this choice was probably a choice that people who had been brainwashed by the righteousness of the Weiss Empire and other reasons would resist. "Ha! Stubborn. Kai, you've settled the little princess. Won't that group of troublesome knight listen to you?" Looking at Ray Minkai's tangled expression, White Cat State Zero actually raised its paw and patted Ray Minkai's face and said disdainfully, "Shut up, State Zero. What nonsense are you talking about? Tisk, you're just pretending." White Cat State Zero snorted and retorted, then ignored Ray Minkai. Anyway, it had already made its proposal. The rest was none of her business. At this time, there was a commotion on the left. It was the search team. They seemed to have found something and were moving the rubble under their feet in a hurry. Some of the smarter ones even sent a distress signal to Avalon. "What happened?" Ray Minkai shouted loudly. "Yes, Knight Commander, our life detection device has responded." The voice of the search team passed through the ruins and sounded in their ears. Ethylum and Edel Lizo, who were walking towards Ray Minkai, suddenly stopped. "Knight Commander." Ethylum's voice was sharp, but also anxious. Ray Minkai understood what she meant. "Don't worry, Princess Ethylum. We will do everything we can." The news of life detection under the ruins boosted the morale of the entire Avalon on the spot. While the morale was high, even without Teresa, Ray Minkai ordered those who had nothing to do to rush to Neku to help. They sent out all the tools and supplies that could be used in the search and rescue as quickly as possible. "Come on." Teresa stood in the middle of the bridge and looked at the situation on the main screen. This news was a timely blessing for Avalon, who had witnessed nearly 1 million people being annihilated in an instant. "Be careful. Be careful. Here. Here." Under the joint efforts of the large machinery and many people, the 10-meter-high debris was quickly cleared out of an area. "Here. It's here." Looking at the rapidly jumping wavy line on the life detection device, the monitoring staff immediately shouted loudly. However, a pillar that was almost 2 meters long blocked the way. If it was just a simple pillar, it could be easily cleared with the help of large machinery. However, around this pillar, there were many piles of rubble and debris. What should they do? If they rashly pulled the pillar away, it might cause a second collapse. In doubt, everyone looked at Ray Minkai. "Let me do it. You all go further away." White Cat State Zero took the initiative to volunteer. "All right, I'll leave it to you." Ray Minkai nodded, and with a wave of his hand, he had everyone retreat far enough away. Then, under the watchful eyes of the crowd, State White Cat Zero relied on its small and agile body to rush into the rubble and disappeared. "Knight Commander." Ethylum was a little confused. "Don't worry, it'll be fine." Before Lei Minkai could finish his sentence, a series of roars rang out. Roar. Amidst the deafening roar, the rubble that had been stacked on top of each other trembled. Moreover, the trembling speed was getting faster and faster. It was so fast that in just a few breaths, the rubble seemed to be directly overturned by a huge and powerful hand and fell to the sides. This was White Cat State Zero's method. Using the rapid growth of the body when transforming into the tusked Lion State Zero, it simply and violently overturned the rubble and reached the ground to rescue the life buried under the rubble. Of course, White Cat State Zero naturally would not forget to use the radiation shield to protect the fragile life. Hey, it's a baby. No wonder it could survive the explosion. But there's only one baby here. A thunderous sound reverberated from State Zero's body. Below its abdomen, A baby was sleeping peacefully, protected by a shelter made of unknown materials. Baby, Ethylam was shocked and quickly rushed up. In her agitation, she even shook off Idalizo's hand. When she rushed to the side of the cabin and saw the words on the nameplate inlaid on the side of the cabin, she couldn't help but tear up. In the hazy tears, Ethylam saw a name and a blessing. Angela, my most beloved daughter, I hope you can grow up in a stable and happy world. At this moment, the Empire's princess, who had always been strong in front of outsiders, could no longer hold back the sadness in her heart and cried bitterly. You're tuning in to the Warrior Lore YouTube channel. Don't forget to subscribe and join us on this journey to catch the most captivating stories.